I'm also moved by it.
Yes. Yes, tell me about that. What moves you?
You talking to me?
All right, welcome back to the Pretentious Film Bro podcast, where we are all about breaking down stereotypes and building connection through film. I'm Brady Odom, and I'm joined here with my partner and co-host Nolan Jones. And today, this podcast, we're discussing 2025. We're going to be talking about first-time watches for us for any kind of movie of 2025, not just the 2025 releases. They could be movies from the 40s, the 80s, the 2010s, all across the board. We're also going to be talking about 2025 releases. We're going to be talking about some of our favorite moments. We're going to be talking about our favorite films. We might even mention ones we didn't really care for all that much. We're going to be talking about all kinds of different rankings. And so they're all going to be in list form, and there's going to be a ton of them coming at you today. So hopefully you'll be able to get in on the discussion to name some of your favorites, tell us what we missed. And Nolan, why don't you go ahead and start us off as we talk about our top 10 first time watches. Now, for these first time watches, these are not including 2025 releases. These are going to be first time watches from other years because some of these 2025 releases, it could spoil some things, but we didn't want to include them in this watch because it's a completely different category. And so, Nolan, whenever you're ready, go ahead and tell us what your number 10 first time watch of 2025 is.
Absolutely. So my number 10 first time watch of 2025 actually begins with my number 14 film for the year. Because as you mentioned, some of those in my top 10 were from the year 2025. So bypassing those, my number 10 non-2025 release film, number 14 for the entire year, April Fool's Day. Now, I am a sucker for holiday horror films. I love them. Or I should say, I love to love them. Because there's several of them that I've seen that I'm like, that was basic, or that wasn't anything special, or yeah, that could maybe go on a rotation. But April Fool's Day, from, let me check the year, I believe it's the 80s is when this movie came out. 1986. April Fool's Day is about a whole bunch of college age or high school age friends getting together at this reserved this party out on a lake. They're isolated, they're alone. They're here for an April 1st, April Fool's Day party, and all of a sudden, bodies start dropping. And it's your typical 80s slasher. It's who's the killer, what's happening, how are we going to survive. It's got all the elements of a slasher that you love, but it's got the April Fool's Day twist. And at the risk of spoiling any more of the film, I'm just going to leave it at that. But I'm going to say if you have not seen April Fool's Day, it's definitely one you should put on your 2026 calendar to check out on the holiday. It is one of the better, it is one of the more endearing, it is one of the more impactful holiday horror films that if you love holiday horror, or even if you're interested, you should definitely check it out. So that's my number 10 first time watch, coming in at number 14 for the year, April Fool's Day.
Yeah, that's one I haven't been able to catch up with. So I'm excited to watch this coming April Fool's Day, April Fool's Day. And what a unique style of holiday, if you want to call it that, horror, right? Because April Fool's Day, who knows what it really is? You can call it a holiday, but I don't get off work for it. So I feel like that's one of those things where it's like, how much of a holiday is it really? But that's also just such a Nolan top 10 film that if you were ever
I'm not sure if I should be offended by that.
No, I don't think you should be. I think that is just, as the kids say, Nolan coded for you to pick April Fool's Day and put it in your top 10 of the year. And I just feel like it's probably, I know it's an enjoyable watch. I don't know. I just find that interesting. And so, but I'm excited to catch up with that and talk about it at a future time with you. My number 10, ranked number 12 in my list for the year, is an Orson Welles film called The Trial. And this stars the star of Psycho, Anthony Perkins. And it's based on a novel. The movie's based on a novel by Franz Kafka that was never finished. But the filmmaker took some liberties and decided he would finish the story for him. And so some people they might disagree with how it ended, because Franz Kafka, he died before he finished it, but he had a publisher, and it's very interesting because the whole movie is about bureaucratic decision making, and I feel like there's some bureaucratic decision making on the finishing of this novel. But The Trial is all about business paranoia, having no idea what you're doing and where you're at, because you are just watching everybody do something completely different than what you're used to. And so in that way, it's very absurd, very funny. I think Anthony Perkins is a very strong lead here, and he makes the movie very watchable. And Orson Welles does what Orson Welles does, and just is a technical master. And even if you don't want to like the guy because you think he's too pretentious, he's pretentious because he's good at what he does. And The Trial proves that. And that was my number 12 ranked on the year, but that is my number 10 first time watch, The Trial.
Great. Well, yeah, to throw your own words at you, that is a very Brady coded film to have in your top 10.
Yeah.
So now for my number 9 pick, 13 of the year, I'm going to give you one that maybe you didn't expect. Maybe this is a non-Nolan coded film. And that is 2004's White Chicks.
Okay. Yeah.
So
definitely. I don't know if that's Nolan coded or not.
No, I don't think it is. Because people that know me, and you knowing me better than most, especially when it comes to movies, you know I'm not a big comedy fan.
Mm.
I'm certainly not a big comedy fan in the style of a movie like White Chicks. But as I watched this movie early in the year, like springtime months, so it's been on the top 10 for a long time, and it's held that position as the year's gone on. But as I was watching this movie, the moment it was over, I could not wait to turn it on again. I was busting a gut through this whole film. And I'm telling you, I do not go for the slapstick type comedy of the early 2000s. I am not a fan of comedies like Hot Rod or Nacho Libre or Napoleon Dynamite. I find them dumb. I don't find them funny. But something about White Chicks, I don't know if it was the irreverence of the comedy. I don't know if it was the fact that it was two black guys playing these uptight, stuck-up white women. I don't know if it was the fact that this movie could never be made today. I don't know if it's that dance scene between the two leads playing the white women in the dance-off in the club. But this movie just absolutely had me cracking up the entire time. And I was like, I've got to get my hands on that film. I haven't yet. It's really sad. It's on the list of ones that I've got to own. It's my favorite comedy that I've seen this year. That might not be true. That movie could be considered a comedy. Anyways, it's one of my favorite comedies of its type. So absolutely, if you've not seen White Chicks, this is one of those movies that they couldn't make it in 2025. But thank God they made it in 2004, because now we have it and we get to keep it and laugh and enjoy it forever. So my number 9 for the year, 13 total, White Chicks.
Awesome. Yeah, I grew up watching White Chicks because it's one of my mom's favorite movies, which I don't think it is a mom movie. I just think that it just happens to be one of hers. And so there's so many quotables in that movie that you have so many different moments that, you say it couldn't be made today. And I understand to an extent, yes, you're probably right. But I think that somehow the Wayans brothers and White Chicks handle it with actually some nuance and care and forethought.
Absolutely.
And I think that is what is so, and there are some very timely things, not just in like what we're experiencing today, but just like, I'll say timeless. I won't say timely. I'll say timeless things of jokes and things that make us laugh. And you have actual, like, I would say decent performances from people like Jennifer Carpenter, Busy Phillips, Terry Crews. Like you have these people who are coming in and they actually like tried, because the Wayans brothers were known for like more satire, more like joking, more ridiculous slapstick humor. But here it's like they tried to make a movie. And so whether it's everybody's favorite or not is up for debate, but it is a funny movie and has quotables for the end of time. And
Yeah.
so on
That
the
that
exact,
may be what it was too. Is it's funny and it's got the slapstick, but it's also a movie that it's got a heartbeat to it,
yeah,
and it's got a really genuine and tender story to it that is elevated by the comedy, not overshadowed or ignored by the comedy.
I would 100% agree with that. Yeah, I would say that I don't think that that's technically Nolan coded, but it doesn't surprise me in a way because maybe it's just because I heard you talk about it earlier this year how much you really loved that movie,
Hmm.
and so yeah, I'm glad that you really love it as much as you do. It actually like makes me happy. Even I don't even think I love it as much as you do, but it just makes me happy that you love it that much, and so
Yeah.
that's just yeah, that's the thing about movies. So on the exact opposite spectrum of happy-go-lucky, joyful, my number 9, my number 11 on the year is After Sun. Which, if White Chicks is about irreverent humor, After Sun is about crippling depression. And it is one of the saddest movies, and unfortunately, one of the more relatable movies I've ever watched in my entire life. There's a scene in this movie, which this doesn't spoil anything, but there's a scene in this movie where the daughter wants her dad to sing karaoke with her. And he loves his daughter. And that, I think, is noticeable through this movie, which is what makes this movie actually as good as I think it is. But he like refuses and is pretty like obstinate about not doing this karaoke with her. And as someone who's been like struggled with depression before, watching him act the way that he does to karaoke was unfortunate because I could tell he wanted to, but he couldn't. And it is such a hard moment in that film. And there's so many other moments like that that make up this movie. It's beautifully shot. It's wonderfully acted. Paul Mescal is, Paul Mescal. So I really do think that if you've not caught up with After Sun, one of the better A24 releases and one of the more interesting styles of filmmaking, and makes me excited for other films from this filmmaker. I want to say her name is Charlotte Wells. I don't know that off the top of my head, but yeah, After Sun. Yeah, Charlotte Wells. So, again, as you can tell, polar opposite of White Chicks. As far as how
Just a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah, just a little different. All right. Well, so that brings me to my number 8, number 12 for the year. And this is another 2000s animated movie that you may or may not have known. People that kind of grew up in our age bracket, I think a lot of them probably caught this movie. I had not. This is one that definitely flew under the radar for me, and that is DreamWorks' The Road to El Dorado.
Okay. First time watch for you?
First time watch for me. Yep. This was another one that early in the year, check this out. And if you don't know the story, it's about these two guys, these two friends who are pretty much criminals. They're swindlers, they're cheaters, and they're about to get busted. So they run out of town, they catch a ship, they swindle their way onto this ship in search of the legendary city of El Dorado. And lo and behold, they find it. They show up, two white guys from Europe in this, I believe, South American landscape. They find the city of gold, and the people there automatically just assume these two men are gods, and they begin to treat them like gods. And they decide, yeah, we're gonna go with this, and we're gonna live this lavishness, and we're just gonna enjoy the ride. And as you can imagine, that doesn't necessarily go the way they wanted, and then they've got a whole bunch of holes to work themselves out of. But this was another one that I enjoyed so much. I enjoyed the comedy of it, the adventure of it. This is another one that I've got to get. I can't wait to share this with my kids someday, because it's one of those underrated, under the radar animated films that kind of falls into that category of maybe ahead of its time, maybe not the right time, maybe it just kind of got missed and overshadowed by Disney films. But The Road to El Dorado, it's one of those films back when animators and animation wasn't afraid to go there.
Yeah.
And I mean in like character design, in adult situations in these children's movies to put in for the parents to enjoy. If you've seen the movie, you know some of these things that I'm vaguely talking about here.
Mm.
And that was one of the things that made early 2000s animation so enjoyable, is because they played for kids, but they also played to adults. And watching these movies as an adult just elevates them to ways that we didn't know when we were kids. So my number 7, number 12 or number 8, number 12 for the year is DreamWorks The Road to El Dorado.
That's also a great pick. I remember loving The Road to El Dorado when I was young. I haven't seen it since I was a child, but I do remember like being fascinated with that movie when I was younger. So I think that's I think it's a great pick, and it's also very memed out. There's a lot of memes. You probably have seen the both the meme, and that is from The Road to El Dorado. But yeah, great pick. I'm loving these picks from you. They're actually so lighthearted for the kind of person you are. Maybe we'll get to the bottom, the top, and see that there's been some ones hanging on there.
You know, we're getting there, but also this is actually probably one of my more lighthearted top 10s of any recent year. So
Really?
I think maybe you'll be surprised. I'm actually kind of surprised looking at it myself.
Well, that's so good. So that's interesting. I'm excited because I haven't checked your list in a while, so I'm interested to see what you have. My number 8, my number 9 on the year is from Paul Schrader, Mishima, The Life in 4 Chapters. And this is a movie that when they release it on Criterion, it's a beautiful release in 4K. The cover design is very, very captivating, and that makes sense when you watch the movie. It is very much one of those movies where you watch it the entire time and you can very much feel it being like a play. And you see this character go through his life in 4 different chapters, the kind of person he is, the experiences he has, his relationships with people, and there's a very through line theme of existence and what it means to exist. And you might think, is there a more human condition question than what does it mean to exist? And one of the quotes from that movie is, "I feel now that I exist." And it comes at a very pivotal point in this character's life, one that we won't discuss because it definitely will make sense when you watch the movie. But it is a very engaging movie. It's one that's not left my head since I've watched it, and that was earlier this year. I want to say it was back in July that I caught it, and it is just one of those movies that I'm so glad I own and that I bought blindly, because as you can tell, I really enjoyed it. At my number 8, number 9 on the year, Mishima, Life in 4 Chapters.
Great. Well, now my next 2 picks kind of go together. I'm going to take them separate, and then I'm going to talk about them just a little bit, but then I'm going to let you do most of the talking, because these 2 films we share in our top 10, and I know these are ones that really hit you even more than they did me, and in a completely different way that they did me. But my number 7, number 10 for the year, entering into the top 10 finally, we have 3 Colors Red.
Okay.
From Polish director, and I'm going to try to pronounce his name, I'm going to butcher it, Krzysztof Kiełowski. This is part of his 3 Colors trilogy. This is actually the final film in his 3 Colors trilogy. They go blue, white, red in the order of the French flag, the colors of the French flag. And red was a very fitting finale. I got to watch all 3 of these films in pretty much quick succession. I watched them in, I believe, like a span of 2 days. I had to stretch it out. Tried to do them all in 1, ended up having to do it in 2, but that's all right. Sometimes that happens. But Red was a very nice conclusion to this trilogy. As a whole, it's one of those movies that engaged me on a mental level, on the ideas that the movie's presenting, on the themes. That's how the trilogy kind of connected to me, which I know with you, I'll let you talk about it, but it connected more with your heart, whereas with me, it connected more with my mind. But so we're going to leave number 7, 3 Colors Red, coming in at number 10 overall for the year.
So you don't know this, but as I was going back to sort of reconsider my list, Three Colors Red is no longer in my top 10 on the year.
Oh,
And now that is not a slight towards the movie at all. I think Three Colors Red is still a phenomenal film. I still think it's like one of those movies that will stick around for a while. But as I was going back and looking at my rankings, I realized there's a few movies I like a little bit more than I like this one. And we'll talk about that. You'll see those coming up. But I think you kind of described it well enough that somebody would want to watch them. I did get to watch them all in one day because they're short films too. They're not long. They're an hour.
They're about 90 minutes.
Yeah, an hour and a half long for each one. Spoiler, needless to say, White would not make hopefully anybody's top 10.
Yeah, that one was really low for me.
That one, that was a rough.
The top 100.
Yeah, that's a rough one. I don't think it's in my top 100 either. But anyway, Three Colors Red is usually seen as the more fitting, like, masterpiece, where the other one, which we'll talk about here in a moment, is definitely more. I don't want to say messy, but it's not as like tightly knit as I would say Three Colors.
Messy is a good word. Messy, thematically, messy in the world of the character. Mm-hmm. Yeah, messy is a good word.
Yeah, and not messy in like terms of its functionality as like a script, but just messy because of the themes of the story. And so that is just kind of how I feel about this one. We'll talk about here in a moment. But number 7 for me on my list, and number 8 overall for the year, is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Now, this is a German expressionist film, the one that definitely popularized the movement. You could maybe say Nosferatu did more, but I definitely believe it's The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari after having seen both of them. And this movie is one of those that it's a silent film, so if you're not into silent film, if you've not seen one, I actually would highly recommend starting with this one. It's very engaging. It's very entertaining, especially if you like production design. It's extremely impressive what they're able to accomplish on this. In fact, one of my other movies, The Trial that I mentioned earlier, you can definitely see The Trial borrow from The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, especially in their use of shadows and their production design. One of those movies that by the time you get to the end of it, you might figure out what's going on. Just because movies back then, they didn't hide their twists as well because they didn't need to. People didn't even know movies could do twists in the 1920s, the 1930s. So, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, as Nick Cage stated in The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, I can see why it's somebody's top 3 movie. It is one of my favorites of the year. One I had to snag. And in 4K, it is a beautiful, beautiful watch.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Nick Cage because if you weren't going to, I was going to.
Yeah.
Certainly couldn't let that one slide by. So yeah, that's definitely, both that and Nosferatu are still, man, they were on my list for this fall and I just missed them.
I would
so
say
sad that I missed
you
them.
Could catch them in the wintertime. I would not necessarily wait for the fall for either of them.
Okay, awesome. Because they're definitely ones that I'm looking forward to watching, and I can sell my wife on them because Nick Cage said it's his top 3 favorite movie, so that makes an easy sell for me. German expressionism. Right? All right. So my number 6 film, coming in at number 9 for the year, is the first film in the Three Colors trilogy. Is Three Colors Blue. And this is one that we've already talked about a little bit, about kind of the messiness of the story and the character and just the things that she is going through. And I'm not going to talk a lot about this one because I know you may not have read in there anymore, but I know you've got this one in. I know you're going to be talking about this film. But needless to say, the Three Colors trilogy is worth it, even though White's a bit of a stinker. And there's people that like White, and I am so glad they like White.
Yeah, more power to them.
But even though White is, as they say in the movie, as they say in the film White, this one's a blank. Even though White is a blank, Blue and Red fully make the trilogy worth your time.
They do.
And Blue is just a beautiful place to start. It's a heartbreaking film, as our main character kind of struggles with this newfound freedom that she has according to circumstances that life has dealt her. And does she really want this freedom, or does she need the connection that she once had? And that's all I'm going to say about the film. I'm going to let you go from there. But yeah, the Three Colors trilogy, if you've not checked it out, it's definitely one that, especially if you are like the foreign cinema, especially if you love French cinema, this is a series that you need to check out. They are worth your time.
Perfect. Yeah, and we'll definitely talk more about that one here coming up. That one has been on my mind for a long time since I caught up with it. It's probably not left my brain one day. So for me, my next one, my number 6, my number 7 on the year is the David Cronenberg Videodrome. And I have been somebody who I've not seen a lot of David Cronenberg. In fact, I think I've only seen 2 to this point. And one is like the one you have to watch, which is Videodrome. And the other one is widely panned, and that's Crimes of the Future. But I really liked Crimes of the Future, and we'll talk about that for another day, maybe on a Cronenberg special we do or something, maybe talking about body horror, which I know we'll probably talk a little bit about that today as well. But Videodrome is one of those things that is prophetic to a biblical proportion on media and the effect that it has on the mind and on the person. And some of the images in this movie are so discomforting because they're not gross in the sense that it's gory. It just doesn't feel good to see. And it's so interesting because they also use the plot device of this person sells snuff media, torture films. And this film, in a way, is sort of like that. As it feels torturous to get through because of some of the imagery you have to put up with while you watch this movie. But it is effective, it's entertaining, and it proves why David Cronenberg is talked about the way David Cronenberg is talked about.
All right. Well, my number 5 pick, number 6 for the year, is a film that I've talked about on this channel already, so I'm just going to keep it very brief. But that is 2001's The Others with Nicole Kidman. I said this before on this channel. I'm going to say it again. This is the best ghost story that I've ever watched. It is one of the most beautiful ghost stories visually that I've ever watched. It's one of the most theologically rich ghost stories that I've ever watched. Because I love a good theologically rich horror film. I've talked about this film before. I'm just talking about it here briefly again. But The Others with Nicole Kidman, if you have not seen this film and you are a fan of ghost films, you are a fan of ghost stories, you're a fan of the gothic kind of atmosphere films, this is definitely one that you should check out. It's my favorite ghost story. It could arguably be one of Nicole Kidman's best performances. It is one that there are moments and twists and turns in this film. Some you may see, but there are definitely others that you will not. So definitely put it on your list if you've not seen it before to check it out coming up in 2026. It's worth your time.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic pick. The Others is such a banger. It's just such a banger. And I don't trust somebody who says they like gothic horror and they like ghost stories and they say, I don't know how I feel about The Others. If you have that opinion, you don't really like, because I'm not saying it's the standard, but it is just fantastic. So that's such a great pick. Keeping in that horror element, keeping in that sort of element that I was talking about earlier too, with Videodrome, my number 5 on the year, number 6, or number 5, first time watch, but 6 total ranking is Pulse by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. And that is the effect of media, but in a way that it will leave you wanting to leave every light on in the house. We've mentioned before about Cure and my love for Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Cure, but Pulse is arguably more openly terrifying and more relatable. It's one of those things where we know the dangers of media. We understand the dangers of the internet and the things that come from it. And there's a scene in this movie that is usually by a lot of like film fans referenced to as one of the most horrifying scenes in all of cinema. And I won't tell you at all what it's about, other than it's not when they're filming it. I bet it looked really funny to film, and then when Kurosawa did his thing, it is one of the scariest things I've ever seen in my entire life. And that is, whew, yeah, Pulse by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. That is the one to catch up with if you want a good little media horror. A little dated, but a fantastic film through and through.
All right. Well, after that, I'm going to bring us back to some lightness again with my number 4 pick, number 5 of the year. It is perhaps one of Robin Williams' more underseen films. It is Patch Adams. And Patch Adams is Robin Williams plays a doctor, a medical student who wants to become a doctor. But in traditional Robin Williams fashion, he does not follow the quote-unquote rules of being a doctor at all. He takes this approach where he's not there just to heal the medicine of the people, but he believes that the medicine is the whole person. And I'm going into kind of that detail because Patch Adams is based on a true story. It is based on an actual man's life. It takes some liberties here and there if you dug in more to the story with some of the moments and things. But this is probably one of the most underrated and underseen Robin Williams films. So if you've not seen Patch Adams and you love Robin Williams, this is definitely one that you need to check out. It's funny. It's tender. Dr. Adams' view of medicine and the way that he just loves and cares for people, especially if you're in a people-caring profession. But even if you're not, it's one of those films that it will make you want to care for people even more, especially those who really can't repay you. So it's a great Robin Williams film. It's a great, based on a true story and a true person film. So I give to you Patch Adams.
Perfect. Yeah, I haven't seen Patch Adams in a long time, but I remember being really moved by it when I watched it. There's a moment, obviously, that a lot of people would probably know if they've seen the movie, what that moment is. But yeah, I feel like that movie it's such a controversial pick, which is just so interesting to me. And you don't really find that out until you get into like film circles, where it's like, oh, I really like this movie. I didn't realize a lot of people didn't like this movie. But I remember definitely being pro Patch Adams. And so I think that's a great pick. Absolutely, Robin Williams, rest in peace, one of the best actors, if nothing but the ability to make us laugh. Gone way too soon. But moving on, my number 4 and the following 4 picks are all in order, so they are 4, 3, 2, 1 in my year-end list. And that is the Three Colors Blue entry. As you mentioned before, I definitely love this movie. I think it was one of the few of this year that was a 5-star watch for me on first watch that has not changed. That has not either gone down or been worse with time. It only gets better with time. I do believe this is the best entry in the 3. One thing I wanted to mention too earlier, like you said, even though White is one of those films where it just doesn't hold up next to the other 2 like juggernauts that are surrounding it. You do need to watch all 3, form your own opinion. And it follows a storyline. I would definitely recommend watching it in order: blue, white, and red. And like you mentioned too, the French, it's after the French flag and what each of those things mean. Blue is liberty, and red is fraternity, and white is what was white again? Do you remember?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. If that doesn't give you the idea of how we definitely feel about how we feel with white. That yeah. So forgive us, film fans who don't know what the white and the French flag means, but it is one of those things where it says liberty and it talks about what it means to find true liberty of oneself, especially after tragedy. And it is a beautiful film. It's very intoxicating to watch. It's one of those things that you just are just blessed by that blue tint throughout the film, and it never feels overused. It is, I think, one of the best movies maybe ever technically made too. Not just made story wise, but technical achievement wise. It's a fantastic movie.
Yeah, the Colors trilogies are absolutely beautiful to watch. The way that he incorporates the colors, but doesn't overdo it. He really uses those colors to set the feel and the tone of the movie. So yeah, check them out. Those are both two high recommendations from both of us. If you've not seen, really, if you've not experienced or wrestled with the Three Colors trilogy, because they really are movies that you experience and you wrestle with afterwards, sometimes for days, sometimes they never leave you, as Brady's mentioned. So
yeah, and white stands for equality. So liberty, equality, and fraternity.
That's right, because the way that they portrayed equality was so weird to us. We forgot that that's what it was supposed to be.
It definitely is one of those artistic choices that I disagree with wholeheartedly, but you know what? To each their own.
Yep, he's a master filmmaker, and we're two guys that just talk about movies.
Yeah, so he's probably right, but then again, Tarantino thinks Paul Dano is the worst part of There Will Be Blood. So directors don't always know everything. So
avoiding that conversation and moving on, my number 3 film, number 4 on the year, getting into those films that could probably be perfect films, and I just need to get over myself and give them the 5-star. The first one is Stanley Kramer. Now that I'm saying that, I'm doubting it. Please don't be wrong. Stanley Kramer's Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And this was a film that was revolutionary for its time. To make the long story short, it's a film about a young white woman who is bringing her boyfriend / new fiance home to meet her parents for the first time. And he is a significantly older black man. And that just throws this whole family into a tizzy. Not because they're a racial or racist family, but because they believe that they're not. They believe that they are very open to people. They believe that their views, to use a modern word that's maybe not the right word, but it's the only one we've got, they believe that they're very liberal in their views and in their social beliefs. But when their daughter brings home this black man and introduces him as her fiance, absolutely just throws their whole evening into a tizzy. And it's a wonderful film. It's one that you could watch this film and be tempted to say, oh, it's a product of its time. It's not really relevant to our society and our culture anymore, which, as a white man who doesn't really know a lot of the experience of that culture, to say that, well, that's simply not true. It does bear relevance to our culture. But as a white man who does not, who cannot connect and sympathize with the black community in that way, the parts of this movie that I really connected with was just the idea of the younger generation wanting to do better than the older generation, of wanting to kind of cast off some of those old beliefs of their parents or their grandparents, generations before them, and really try to do what they believe is right. Which, as we look at it, we know that this is right. But to cast off the old ways and to bring in the new. And for me, that's the part of the movie that I really connected with. That's the part of this movie that I believe is timeless and will always remain timeless. So if you have somehow missed, like I had until this year, Stanley Kramer's 1960s Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, don't miss it any longer. This is your sign. This is one of those classic films that is as relevant today and as important today as it was back when it was first made.
Okay. Yeah, I still have not seen that one, so I'll definitely catch up with it eventually. I mean, I know of its importance, or I'll say its impact in the film community, so I definitely do need to check it out. Stanley Kramer is a good filmmaker.
Yeah.
You know, he's had some other ones that I know you don't like, but I know he did It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, and he did Charade, which Charade is a good one. Or no, that might be Stanley Donen.
Yeah.
That was Stanley Donen. That's not Stanley Kramer. But yeah, anyway, I definitely will check out Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. But my number 3, getting into top 3 of the year, first time watches, is Godland. And Godland is a movie based on 7 photographs of this journey through, I guess you could say, the Icelandic terrain, and of these different people. And it is one of those movies that it is not for the faint of heart. It is a slow burn of a movie, and you feel every minute of its runtime, but that doesn't make it any worse or any better than another movie. It is one of those movies where you get to the end, and it's about this man who is in ministry and his wrestling with theology, and another man who has never understood religion but is interested. And you see human nature come into play. And that's all I'll say about that. And it is a fantastic film, worth every minute. It's a beautifully shot film. It is a hard watch. But if you have any kind of religious beliefs, or maybe you're interested in religious belief, it is definitely worth your time watching.
Yeah, Godland is one I've had on my shelf for probably a year now, and just have not done it. I'm waiting on that Saturday when I don't have anything to do, that I can just come up Saturday morning, pop it in, and enjoy 2.5 hours and just let what I'm imagining, based on what you've said and even the little I know of this film, just this life-changing sermon just wash over me. I am so looking forward to it, and hopefully very soon I get the chance to actually do that. So moving into my number 2 pick, my number 3 for the year, this is another film that I've talked about on this channel quite significantly. It was part of my top 5 film noir list in our Noirvember episode, but that was 1945's Leave Her to Heaven. And since I talked about this film so much in that episode, I'm just going to go ahead and say again, if you're a fan of noir and you've missed this film, which it's very possible you have, I believe this is one that has kind of flown under the radar. It's not been in a lot of print, not been in a lot of circulation. It's really hard to get a hold of outside of the Criterion Collection. But if you're a fan of noir, this is one you've got to see. The Technicolor is beautiful. The femme fatale is maybe one of the most fatal in all of noir film. So yeah, that's my number 2. Number 3 for the year. Again, probably one that I just need to go ahead and tell it it's a perfect film. It's Leave Her to Heaven.
Okay. Yeah, I'll need to catch up with that one as well. But my number 2 is Jonathan Glazer's 2023, The Zone of Interest. And this was a movie that, without saying anything, it is a lot of audio and not a lot of visual. Now, it is a beautiful movie in the way that it looks. You do see things, but you don't see the things that you hear. And I'll leave it at that. There are some, definitely, the way that it is filmed, the intentionality of it is one of those movies that's best left unspoiled. like most movies, but it's also best left if you go into it completely blind. If you don't know what the zone of interest is about, don't look it up. Just turn it on, and you won't be disappointed. Now, maybe you will be, but I think that if you really think about what the movie is saying in our current context of today and the context of the time that it takes place in, it's a harrowing journey, but it is an unbelievable picture. An immediate 5-star. There was never going to be any doubt about it.
Yep, that's one that I'm really looking forward to as well. And it was one that I had been looking forward to even before you saw it, and then you saw it and praised it, and I was like, oh man, I got to get on it. That may be a nice January watch.
Probably.
And that's all I'm going to say about that, at risk of spoiling some of the film. So my number one pick is my number one film of the year. This is the one that immediately went to the top. It is the one that has stayed at the top. And once I give a little bit of detail from it, that'll make sense to you. But this is a Studio Ghibli film. This is not actually a Miyazaki film. This is from their other multiple directed film director in the Ghibli line. It's from Isao Takahata.
I think that's correct.
I believe that's how you pronounce his name. That's what I'm going with. And it is Only Yesterday. And this movie, I remember we turned this on and we thought we could get through the whole thing, but we knew we'd have to pause it eventually because we had to leave for a prior planned event. And when I tell you it physically hurt me to pause this film and to have to save the last 40 minutes for the next day, I'm not exaggerating. Like, I was so sad to have to pause this film because I was so enraptured by it. I was so enraptured by the story of our lead character. It's about this young woman who, Takeo, she takes this trip to the countryside in Japan for the summer. And as she's taking this trip as an adult, as a young 20-something, her 5th grade self goes with her on this trip. Her 10-year-old self goes with her. And this movie cuts back and forth between her currently as this 20-something and back to her 5th grade self, telling the story of how her childhood shaped her into the woman she is. When, I think about this movie, I think about the quote where they say, wherever you go, there you are. And that's what this film is. It shows how her childhood, the good and the bad and some of the things that just were, how it shaped her into the adult that she became. And this is just, it became the first Studio Ghibli film that I've given 5 stars to, which there's probably others that should be. We'll see. But it was the one that finally was, this is a 5-star Ghibli film. No questions asked, no argument. It may be one of the more underseen. If you are a fan of Studio Ghibli and you somehow missed Only Yesterday, it needs to go to the top of your list. This is one of those movies that it touched my life and it changed me, even just a little bit. There were 2 movies that did that to me this year. The other one we'll talk about when we start talking about 2025 releases, but this was the first one of the year that touched my life and changed my perspective. And after I was like instant 5-star. So, yep, there we have my number one film of the year, my number one first time watch, Only Yesterday.
Perfect. Yeah. Studio Ghibli, they just know what they're doing, man. They know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing.
And so my number one watch of the year, you're not surprised what it's going to be. But my number one watch of the year, my number one first time watch is The Celebration and/or Festen by Thomas Vinterberg. I will say absolutely nothing about this film. I will say watch it. That is it. Yep. I know, long story short, but that's the best way to talk about this movie.
Yep.
Turn on Festen. Did you
I
pick it up? Yeah.
I did. Yep, I picked it up in November. It's on my list.
Yep.
Shout out to Shout out to my friend Kelly, who is an older woman. I'm not going to call you old, Kelly, at all, because I know you listen to this podcast, but she is an older woman who I found out this is one of her favorite movies. So after both you recommended this movie to me, and then she recommended this movie, who, in my opinion, I thought had vastly different taste than we do, but she also really loves the Kill Bill films, so maybe she's not that far off. Once both you and her recommended this film, I was like, okay, I've got to pick it up. It is worth the blind pickup and checking it out. So, yep, that one's on my list, and it will be there probably pretty quickly once 2026 starts.
And that makes sense. So I hope that you appreciate it as much as we appreciate it.
Me too.
But now moving on, with these next films, we won't discuss them very long at all. These are just our releases for 2025. They're going to be another top 10. We're going to alternate the same way that we just did. This time I will start with my top 10 and count down backwards. We'll alternate the same way. And this pick is a particularly interesting one because I just caught up with it yesterday. But I do think that it is worthy of placement on my top 10, if for nothing than what we'll kind of touch on in a little bit. But that is Yorgos Lanthimos' Bugonia. Starring Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons. Long story short, the reality of the story is that Jesse Plemons believes that Emma Stone is indeed an alien. And it's so interesting because when you log this film on Letterboxd, it does a CAPTCHA. And I'm not going to tell you what that means, other than it's just interesting enough that when I logged it, it had me do that, and I thought that was a really interesting kind of thing. Kind of how Portrait of a Lady on Fire on Letterboxd, they're all flames, or on Scream films, if you have the spoiler, it's the ghost face mask. Everything Everywhere All at Once, they have the googly eyes as opposed to the heart or the stars, and so it's one of those interesting little things that Letterboxd introduced, and I thought it was very fitting for what it did. But Bugonia is a film that it's a very Yorgos Lanthimos film. But I will say it is also an outlier in a way because they talk, for the most part, with normal intonation in this film. And every other Yorgos Lanthimos film that I've seen 4 of them, Lobster, Killing of a Sacred Deer, and Poor Things. There's always an interesting dialogue, way of speak. In this one, it's actually very grounded in normal, for the most part, normal dialogue. So that is my number 10 favorite film of 2025, and that is Bugonia.
All right. Starting off with a very interesting one. I can't speak much to it. I haven't seen any of Lanthimos' work, but I've heard some interesting and divisive things about that film. So that's a very nice start. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and start my number 10 film with another one that's divisive, even between you and I. And this may be opening up a big discussion, so if it does, we'll try to keep it short. But that is Kogonada's A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey. Now, you and I, we're both very big fans of Kogonada.
Yeah.
Columbus is one of our favorite films. It's one of the greatest films, the kindest films ever made. With After Yang, he follows that. Kogonada is just one of those people that loves people so much that he just makes you want to be a better person after you've watched his film. But in A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, you've got Margot Robbie and Colin Farrell. And they're these 2 strangers who end up going on this big, bold, beautiful journey together. And as this journey goes, they have this magic GPS that leads them to these magic doors in the middle of nowhere that take them back to moments from their past. And the premise is, as they're going through these different doors, they're healing wounds from their past and they're growing closer in their relationship together. Now, where this movie's kind of been controversial, at least between you and I, and even I say this is my number 10 for 2025, that doesn't mean it's super high on my list. I believe it's actually outside of the top 20, but it's still number 10 when you look at the films of this year. It's a Kogonada directed, but it's not a Kogonada story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as you're watching A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, you feel that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're not a huge fan of Kogonada's Columbus or After Yang, where you're like, yeah, that's fine, I enjoyed it, it's whatever, you may really love Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey. My wife did. This was her favorite film of the two of his that we've seen. And she wasn't the biggest fan of Columbus. So, but this film really worked for her. So it's a very interesting take on a romantic relationship. It is very big and it is very bold. It has the aspects of Kogonada that you know, but the story doesn't feel the same. So some of you, if you are fans of Kogonada, some of you may love that. Some of you may hate it. Some of you may be able to look past it based on the other things in the film, and none of you would be wrong. So I give you Kogonada's Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey.
Yep.
My number 10 of 2025.
I won't say much to it now. There might be a category in which this movie comes back up for me personally. But it might be. I'm not going to say that there is, but I think you also described it really well. And so, especially why someone may or may not appreciate the film as they do. And so I did not realize that would be your number 10. So that actually is very interesting to me. So I appreciated that. I was surprised.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it was higher, but then it's gone lower as I've reworked my top 10 for this episode. And I think I'm happy with it being at number 10. I think that's a very good place for it.
Yeah. After Yang and Columbus are both, in my opinion, perfect films. And so I appreciate both of them very highly. So I guess we'll see how I feel about A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey moving on. My number 9 on the year is this was one of my most highly anticipated movies of the year. And so I went all out. We went to a pretty big theater to go watch it. It was a packed out crowd. I was super excited. And that is Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another. And One Battle After Another is one of those movies where it was pretty polarizing, not in divisive opinions, but as a movie that was a Paul Thomas Anderson movie for the masses. And it's one of those that Leonardo DiCaprio has been praised endlessly on. And even though I don't think this is even one of Leonardo's best performances, in the past few years, I would say that there's other better performances from Leo. But people really love him. And I love the fact that he worked with Paul Thomas Anderson, one of my favorite filmmakers. But this movie is definitely, it is an action-packed comedy that I can see why it's getting the acclaim that it is, even though I highly disagree with quite a bit of some of the premise of the film. And not even just in its politics. I'll say I disagree more so with the praise it's getting from a good written Paul Thomas Anderson script, because I think that some of the praises that it receives, I don't think it's worthy of. But that is not in the technical aspect of things. The technical aspect of this movie is probably perfect. I can't think of one bad shot editing clunk mistake in this movie, one bad sound decision, like one bad music decision. Everything is pretty much teed up perfectly there. But yeah, so my number 9 is One Battle After Another. In my opinion, the most overrated movie of the year. Not in that it's not a good movie. It's my number 9 of favorite of 2025. But the fact that it is praised as though it is the first movie that's ever existed is just a bit much for me. But that is my number 9.
All right. Yeah, and I think this is a good time to mention, as we're going through our top 10, you may go, well, what about this movie? What about that movie? And the simple truth is, this wasn't Pokemon, and we didn't catch them all. There were a lot of 2025 films that either one or both of us missed, which is really nice that you caught up with One Battle After Another, because that is one that I wasn't able to catch before the recording of this episode. It is definitely one I want to catch, and one that I may even, if possible, try to catch before the end of the year. but it's not one that currently is in my list because I haven't seen it. I can't rank it, and there will be ones in my list that you couldn't rank because you haven't seen. So our selections are very much based on films we have seen. We thought that was the only fair way to do it. So with that caveat out of the way, my number 9 film is another one that I know you were really excited for, but you've missed up to this point, and a lot of people probably really missed, but they shouldn't. And it's Mike Flanagan's The Life of Chuck.
Yeah.
And here, this is another one of those movies that could be very polarizing, not only for Flanagan fans, but just for horror fans or Stephen King fans in general. It's based off of a Stephen King novella, and it's very out there is not the right word, but the creative ways that it takes you through the life of Chuck and really the life of one individual person and the significance of that one life is very unique to Flanagan. It's very unique to Stephen King, as if all you know Stephen King as is a horror writer, if all you know Mike Flanagan as is a horror director. It's one of those movies that probably fell under the radar. It is Mike Flanagan at his most sentimental and at his most otherworldly, maybe is the word, most unique, which means a lot of you probably missed it. And if you did miss it, you really need to go back and catch it. It's not the best movie of the year. It's not my favorite Mike Flanagan film ever made. It's not going to be maybe the best Stephen King movie ever made, depending on what parts of Stephen King you like. But it is a film that is worthy of your time. Tom Hiddleston delivers a great performance as Chuck in this film. And it is one that it has the elements of both those, the writer Stephen King and the director Mike Flanagan. And it's one that you should check out if you missed.
Okay.
Yeah, The Life of Chuck.
Yeah, that is definitely one I've wanted to catch up with. I just haven't had the opportunity to see that one because it's still not available for streaming anywhere, which is unfortunate. But hopefully soon, even if it's not, I might just have to rent it because I've been a big fan of Flanagan up to this point. So, but number 8 on my list is one that we both have seen. One that I feel like we're pretty close in opinions. I think I'm a tad more favorable on it than you are. But that is the follow-up feature to Talk to Me and Bring Her Back by the Philippi brothers. This was a movie I did not know I was going to see. Actually, it was our theater did a mystery night, and I went and saw. I knew it was horror. That's all I knew. My hope was that it was hopefully going to be back or Bring Her Back, but I didn't know that it was going to be that. And then when it was, I was extremely excited. And this is Talk to Me dialed to 100 in the scare factor and the intensity factor. Talk to Me is a very scary movie, though. It's a good horror film, and it's definitely one of those films that like gives you chills. Bring Her Back is like in your face, like I'm going to punch you through a wall kind of horror. And watching that with a full crowd was extremely exciting. One guy left. He came back, but he did have to leave for a couple scenes, and I thought that was so funny. I was sitting in my chair like this, just kind of peeking over my shoulder, which if you know me, I'm a huge horror fan. For a movie to do that to me is a big deal. And yeah, Bring Her Back is one of those movies that I was extremely excited to see this year. I think that it maybe didn't live all the way up to the hype that I was hopeful for, but it did what I wanted it to do, which was scare me and give me a heartfelt, emotional response to trauma. And I think that the Philippi brothers, I'm so excited to see how they continue to grow in their filmmaking journey. And I'm ready for the next one. Because Bring Her Back, in my eyes, was more of a success than a failure.
Yeah, that's definitely one where our rankings for sure are very aligned, but you are much, much more favorable than I am on the film, significantly. And I don't know if that's because you got to catch it in the theater and I watched it at home on a Saturday morning. And it just wasn't the right time to do it. Maybe if I came back and picked it up, I'd like it more. But everything you said, absolutely true. It's not a film to scoff at, especially if you enjoyed Talk to Me, especially if you like some of the more grotesque, for lack of a better word, horror moments. Bring Her Back is one that will definitely make your skin crawl at times, for sure. So I love it. Keeping with the skin crawling, we have my number 8. And this is a film that has gone up as I worked on this list and thought these things through. It has not left my mind really since I watched it, which I was not expecting, but it just, this one blew my mind. And that's Together. I was not expecting this film not only to hit me the way it did, but to linger the way it has. And even watching it, when I watched it the first time, I was like, that was good. That was actually quite good. I liked it quite a bit. But it's been in the aftermath of this film and thinking about some of the moments or thinking about the themes of the film or the way that the film ends and just having that whole thing play. This movie's been in my head since I watched it several weeks ago. It's one of those that I can't wait to rewatch again. It's one that I had to pick up and put on my own shelf. So if that's not a high enough recommendation for you, I paid money for this film and put it on my shelf because I cannot wait to watch this again. It had all of the things that I like and I've come to really be intrigued by and to love about body horror. It's grotesque, but it's not. In the same sense that a lot of the grotesqueness of the film happens off screen or happens very briefly. It doesn't hammer in on the gore of the movie, but it really hammers in on the connection between the two leading characters, the boyfriend and girlfriend at the center of this film, and the struggles in their relationship. And the horror is used as an element to explore those deeper human connections. And that's really why this film it's just gone up and up and up. It's probably jumped 20 spots from where it first was just because of how it's lingered. So yeah, if you miss Together, it's not for the faint of heart or for the light of stomach. It is very much like Bring Her Back. It's one that you've got to have a strong stomach and you might want to be ready to pull that blanket up because there are moments. But if that's something that you enjoy, if that's a part of horror that you really like, if you want a horror movie that's going to leave you thinking after it's over, maybe for several weeks like it has for me, then Together is one that I can't recommend high enough.
Okay, yeah. Ironically, I caught Together alone in an empty theater. And I will say that I can appreciate that it's like lingered with you as much as it has. I will say that it's probably lingered with me as well, but my opinion of it hasn't changed. I still am favorable on it. I still liked the movie, but it's not one of those things that's like, wow, this is what I like crave. I think it's a solid movie. It didn't make my top 10, but I do think that it's a solid movie, and I'm glad that it made you worse so that you could share about it because it is one worth talking about for sure. Yeah, great mention. So my number, I guess, are we on number 6 now?
Yes.
Or 7. We're on 7.
7.
Yep. My number 7 is one that I really did not expect. I knew I would like it, but I really did not expect to like it this much, and that is The Naked Gun with Liam Neeson and Pamela Anderson. I watched the Leslie Nielsen Naked Gun when I was younger with my dad because my dad really liked Leslie Nielsen movies like The Naked Gun and Airplane. And I always found that movie really funny, even as a little kid, because the jokes, they do hit. They're so stupid. They're so funny. They're slapstick. It's witty. It's unique. And Liam Neeson honestly does an amazing job as the son for Leslie Nielsen in this film. And there are so many good jokes. There are so many really well done shticks. And one we may or may not talk about later on, but there is a scene in there that had my stomach in knots. I was laughing so hard that I could not breathe. And I think that for a movie to do that is just that's what you go to see a comedy for. And I think that's why I appreciate this movie so much, is because it does exactly what a comedy needs to do. It gets in, it makes you holler, and it gets out. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It doesn't take itself too seriously. The plot is absurd, but every joke makes it so worth it. And I think you haven't caught up with this one yet. And I don't know how you'll feel about it, because I don't know if slapstick humor is like something that's going to make you laugh. But I think if anything, you'll get to the end and you'll appreciate like how many jokes can they really throw into one movie. And the Naked Gun wants to say as many as you think. So that The Naked Gun is a great comedy. It was a great watch, and one of those movies that I didn't know if I was going to see it, but I have a buddy who's really into comedy, and I was like, why don't we go check it out? And I'm very glad that we did, as it made number 7 on my top 10 list of this year.
All right, so for my number 7, I've got another possibly controversial pick within the fandom of this filmmaker. Well, it depends on where you land on this. I believe that maybe you'll be talking about this one a little bit later too. But that is Wes Anderson's The Phoenician Scheme.
Okay.
And there are many people who are fans of Wes Anderson that for some reason they look at this film and they think maybe it's a lesser Anderson. It's a more disingenuous Wes Anderson film.
Which is ridiculous.
It's a loss of form from Wes Anderson. I don't know. There's so many bizarre and interesting takes to The Phoenician Scheme that, as somebody who is not a Wes Anderson fan, but somebody who has not fully seen all of the director's work, been exposing to more Wes Anderson films this year, and this was one that definitely wanted to catch, especially with all the word of mouth going around about this film and all the divisiveness of it. But this is, in my opinion, this is a top 5, possibly a top 3 Wes Anderson film.
Wow.
Yeah, and again, haven't seen his entire filmography. The guy's got my favorite film of all time, hands down, out of his filmography.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe The Phoenician Scheme is an easy top 5, and I actually think it is. I think it's number 3. Just right behind Moonrise Kingdom and Fantastic Mr. Fox. Both excellent films. So The Phoenician Scheme is interesting because it tackles things that Wes Anderson really hasn't tackled before.
Mm-hmm.
It's got all of his elements. It's got the quick cut shots and the scheming, making the plan images and explaining the plan and the quick cuts and the symmetry and everything. But it's perhaps one of his most violent films, if not his most violent film.
It is his most violent, for sure.
It is a film where he looks at religion versus capitalism. Is that the right word? Industry, business?
Industry is more what
industry
I would say.
Industry is a better word.
I really don't think
industry versus religion. Yeah, it's not really capitalist. And the things that Wes Anderson has to say about both are fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand the divisiveness of this film. I don't understand the fact of so many Wes Anderson fans rejecting this film, because for me, this is not a slump. I mean, this is Wes Anderson at the top of his game. He's trying something new. It's completely genuine. There's a line in the moment, or not in the moment, there's a line in the film where the nun character, she says something to the likes of, it's not so much about your words. I don't know exactly how she says it, but she says it's not about your words, your posture, something of that nature. She says it's about your devotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is one of Wes Anderson's maybe most devoted films.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely genuine. It's completely devoted. It's completely honest. And if you have missed The Phoenician Scheme, from this budding Wes Anderson fan to you, I think this is a top 3.
Hmm.
I think he is not slowing down, and I can't wait to see what else he comes out with next.
Yeah, great recap of that, and we'll definitely be talking more about it here soon. So I'll save that for a moment. My number 6 is one that kind of stuck up on me. I did not see coming. Really, not one of those. Not so much a surprising film, but one that I didn't even know if I'd get around to, and that was The Perfect Neighbor. And The Perfect Neighbor is a documentary solely captured on police body cam footage and police station cameras. And essentially, it takes place in Florida, and it's based on real events, obviously. And it's this series of interactions between two neighbors. One is an older white lady, and the other one is a single black mom. And it's really revolving around the connection between the older white lady and the children that are there in the neighborhood. And without giving anything away, we'll just say it goes a direction that you can probably see it going. And it sort of does this thing where it has you from the perspective of the body cam footage of what would you do in this situation and how do you handle this situation. And I'll say it this way: your anger and frustration towards the situation, you will seethe if you have human decency. You will have this feeling of, I cannot believe what is happening. It will irritate you to no end, probably because you know people just like this person. And yeah, The Perfect Neighbor is one of those movies that I was like watching it the entire time, and I really could not believe how just enamored I was in this documentary. So if you've not caught up with The Perfect Neighbor, I would highly recommend it, especially if you want to watch a documentary that might be a little bit more captivating. This is one for the books for sure, and one that I think deserves the hype that it got.
All right. Always good to throw a documentary on the list
Mm-hmm.
and to find a really good documentary that's worth talking about
Mm-hmm.
among all the fiction and the storytelling, something that's true to life and really true to the events.
Yeah.
All right. So number 6 is where my list shifts from the kind of maybe more under the radar, more pretentious moviegoer list to really popcorn films in a lot of ways. Not to say that these films are bad by any measure of the stretch, but maybe they're more popular or they're more involved with the culture of the year of 2025. But I had to include these because they ranked high on my list. All these came in the top 20 of my year, just period across the board. So my number 6 for 2025 was my most anticipated film of the year. And you're gonna scoff at me or roll my eyes when I tell you
wait,
that
I know what it is.
that was Megan 2.0.
Yeah, I knew. I had no idea.
He gives me so much crap for this movie.
Yeah, I did not see that coming. What a shock.
Yeah, no way. Just totally came out of left field. No, I loved Megan when it came out in 2023. Getting to see Megan in theaters when it came out was literally one of the best theater experiences I think I've had, for sure, in recent years. Maybe top just that I can remember ever. So when Megan 2.0 got announced, I was beyond excited for this. I knew that it probably wasn't going to live up or that it was going to be different. And I was prepared for that. And I think that's where this film dropped with a lot of people. Because Megan, the first film from 2023, was very much a horror slasher doll, AI robotic doll movie. It leaned heavily into that horror element. Whereas Megan 2.0 takes a page from the book of films such as Alien or The Terminator, and it leaves that horror origin story for a more sci-fi sequel. And I love this movie. I love the Megan films. Brady gives me so much crap, but I like to remind him, you haven't seen it, you don't get an opinion. Until you see it, you don't get a voice.
I
And
have watched the trailers, Nolan.
yeah, the trailer is not the movie. And I know when you watch this movie, you're going to come back to me and you're going to say, that was the dumbest 90 minutes of my life. And I'm going to say, I don't care. I love it.
Yeah, you're
these
allowed
are-
to have that opinion.
That's true. And if it's wrong, I am going to die on this hill. The Megan films are a guilty pleasure, but there is no guilt here.
Mm.
I love Megan as a character. I love some of the lines that she gets. I love Gemma and Katie as two people who are way over their heads with Megan. And in Megan 2.0, they're equally way over their heads with just the situation and the happenings going on. But man, I just have such a good time. I really enjoy these films. So number 6, one of my most anticipated films of the year. It totally lived up to what I was hoping for. Megan 2.0.
Okay. Yeah, I can't speak to it. I haven't seen it. I just give you a hard time because it's funny to give you a hard time. But it reminds me too that you do have a mind of your own. You think what you think. It's like that's why we have good discussions. You're not a parrot. You're not a person who's just going to sit here and be afraid of your own opinion. A lot of people, if they really liked Megan 2.0, they're not going to say that out loud. They're going to hide that. And you're like, you know what? No, I like Megan 2.0. And it's my number 6 on the year. And you know what? That is 100% like, that's why I appreciate these conversations. And so moving forward into my top 5, my number 5 is The Phoenician Scheme by Wes Anderson. I love the arc of Wes Anderson that he's going on right now. These very introspective reflections on filmmaking and on himself and this relationship dynamic that he's had going on since probably French Dispatch. This literary opinion that he has, French Dispatch and Asteroid City and the Phoenician Scheme, I think in a lot of ways make for a spiritual trilogy. And while I do think that the Phoenician Scheme is probably the weakest out of those 3, it's not a bad film. And Benicio del Toro does not give a bad performance. And those people who praise his performance in One Battle After Another and ignore his performance in the Phoenician Scheme, it gets under my skin. I think Benicio del Toro is unbelievable as Zsa Zsa Corda in the Phoenician Scheme. And it is one of those Wes Anderson movies that I think it doesn't hinge entirely on the lead actor, but it is a heavy Wes Anderson leading actor film. And what I mean by that is a lot of times when you watch Wes Anderson movies, you have a lead actor, but it's about the ensemble of the cast.
Mm-hmm.
But this movie leans so heavily on the character of Zsa Zsa Corda. And while he's not by himself, and his other performances, which we may or may not talk about later on, are super impactful to the film, it is about him. And I think that is what makes this movie as good as it is. And I think Wes Anderson did a great job, especially he had to switch cinematographers. And when you have a very specific style like Wes Anderson has, it can be hard to bring in a new person. But the person he brought in is a experienced, just genius whiz cameraman, Bruno Delbonnel. He also did the cinematography for The Half-Blood Prince, Harry Potter, which is just such a random connection. And he did the cinematography for Inside Llewyn Davis. And he's done other cinematography works, but you can tell that he's a whiz behind the camera. And so The Phoenician Scheme is top 5 of the year for me. One of my more anticipated films of the year. Anytime Wes Anderson's going to drop, especially right now, and whatever bag he's in, I am in it. I love Asteroid City, I love The French Dispatch, and I love The Phoenician Scheme. Not a weak one of the bunch. When I said the weakest, that just means out of the 3, I prefer it the least. But it's still a fantastic movie and one I cannot wait to rewatch and show other people.
Yep, and that's. I mean, we've said all we need to say about that film, and like you said, we're not done. At least I know from my end of things, I'm not done.
Yep,
So my number 5 film, now breaking into the top 5, sticking with the more mainstream popcorn movies, is one that I did not expect to be this high on the list at all. But after watching it, I I couldn't deny it, and that is the Fantastic Four: First Steps. And the Fantastic Four, they have had a rough run in film. I mean, their last one was Fan Four Stick, which I don't have any desire to watch that movie. The two before that, while
Wait, say that again.
Fan Four Stick.
I know it's that's a meme from the movie Miles Teller. Someone says we're like a group of Fantastic Four, and he turns to him and goes, "Say that again." And it is one of the cringiest, memed out. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut your train of thought
for
there.
memeing me out. But yeah, and then you've got, of course, the early 2000s Fantastic Fours with Ian Gruffudd and Chris Evans and Jessica Alba, and those were the ones that we grew up on. So to me, those always have this special place of cheesy, bad superhero movie love in my heart. But the Fantastic Four: First Steps, this is the Fantastic Family we've been waiting for. This was the one. From the 1960s futuristic New York style to the fact that Galactus was actually Galactus and not a space cloud. This film was just, they nailed it. Marvel really nailed it this time. Is it perfect? It's not perfect. Could it have been better? I don't know that it could have. The Fantastic Four: First Steps, this is a movie that should have got more when it was in theaters. It should have got more love. It should have got more attention, because this is it. This is the Fantastic Four family we've been waiting for. This is a film that has an unexpected emotional heart at the center of the story that none of the other Fantastic films have had, and that helps elevate it. The performance that we get of the Silver Surfer in this film she's fantastic. It's Julia Garner. She's fantastic in this film. I considered this performance for later in the list. I passed it for another, but I considered it because she's just fantastic. She's fantastic. No. So the Fantastic Four: First Steps, if you missed it and you only pick up one Marvel film from the past year, I think this is the one that I would tell you to pick up. It's visually beautiful. They capture the heart of the Fantastic Four family. It takes the family to places they've never been before. The villain is probably the most intimidating since Thanos. It's just, this should have been a win for Marvel. And if you've not caught it yet, go back and pick it up. My number 5, The Fantastic Four: First Steps.
All right. That's awesome. Yeah, one I hadn't been able to catch up with, but I'd also still been marveled out for a while. But I'll come back around to it. I'll try to do what I can. But Fantastic Four was one I was genuinely interested in seeing, and so that might be one I do catch up with sooner rather than later. My number 4 was one of my highly anticipated films of this year. One that I didn't know exactly how it would turn out, but the concept was so intriguing to me. And it's a follow-up feature from another horror director from another horror film that received a lot of acclaim, although I don't love it. And that's Zach Cregger's Barbarian. This is the follow-up, Weapons. And Weapons is one of those movies that when I went to go see it, I walked out high. That was a movie that truly scared me and made me laugh a lot. And it never felt unnatural in the balancing of those tones. I feel like you have an unbelievable performance from Julia Garner. Again, I think that her role as a teacher in this film is one of those things where you see her really shine for who she is as an actress, and we definitely have not seen the glass of Julia Garner. This
I
is
hope
also, yeah, this is also paired with other great actors, right? You have Josh Brolin, who, if you also look at this year, just on top of all of these like people in multiple films, you have Josh Brolin is in Weapons, and he is not in the new Knives Out movie. He's in that one. I haven't got to catch up with that one, but you have Michael Cera, who is in The Phoenician Scheme, and he's also in The Running Man, Edgar Wright and Wes Anderson. You have Benicio del Toro, who's in Paul Thomas Anderson and in a Wes Anderson movie. You have all of these people, Julia Garner in Fantastic Four and in Weapons. You have all these really big actors who were in multiple movies this year who had standout performances in each of them. And I think that that is just something that is really just special to see too. And so, yeah, but Weapons is one of those movies that I am very high on. I do think it's worthy of all the hype that it's getting, even if it's not as strong as a movie as people are like making it out to be. I'm glad that people love this movie because I love this movie, and it was one of my favorite theater watches of the year, and one of the most interesting plots and plot layouts of movies I saw this year.
Yeah. I am glad people love this movie too, because I wasn't necessarily one of them. I appreciated this movie a lot for the way it went, but it just wasn't. It was one of those that to me it got lost in the sauce. So I really appreciate that you appreciated it. I'm glad that you were able to talk about it and recommend it and reminisce about it here, because I do think I'm in the minority of that crowd. I think a lot of people really loved Weapons, and for really good reason. So moving on to my number 4 pick. This is the first. No, that's not true. I was going to say it's the first sequel on my list. It's not the first sequel on my list. But my number 4 pick is The Black Phone 2. And I tell you what, I am all in on Scott Derrickson. I saw his film first in The Black Phone. That was the first film that I saw by him. And then I caught Doctor Strange several years after it released. And then I went back and I caught, I'm blanking on the name of it now, the Ethan Hawke film.
Sinister?
Yep, that's the one. I went back and I caught Sinister. And then I came now, and here we are with Black Phone 2, and I am all in with Scott Derrickson. I think he is one of the finest horror directors working. He is one of the most interesting directors to me because of the theological bend that he has in his films. I can't profess to what he believes theologically or about religion. His films make it very much appear that he has some sort of Christian belief. That came very strongly through in The Black Phone, through Gwen's character. It comes through even stronger in The Black Phone 2. Which means, if that's not your cup of tea, you're not going to enjoy this film. But if you're interested in seeing what Derrickson has to say about religion and Christianity specifically through horrific events, because we're picking back up with The Grabber, right? From the first Black Phone, The Grabber is back here. The slogan of the movie was "Dead doesn't mean gone." And The Black Phone, it's a ghost story. If you haven't seen it, it's about these kidnapped and murdered children who communicate with this one living child and his sister, now in the sequel, through a telephone, through a black telephone. And they communicate with him and his sister to try to get justice for their deaths. And they really, in The Black Phone 2, where Black Phone focused on Finney, her older brother, Black Phone 2 really focuses in on Gwen's character and on her struggles that she's going through with just the dreams that she has and these premonitions and her religious beliefs and her relationship with Jesus and all of those things, and how it's just weighing on her and wearing her down, and how she's coming to confront the grabber, because Black Phone 2 really is her film. And it is bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers. It takes everything from Black Phone and it amps it up to about 11. The Christianity, exploration, and talk, the bonkersness of just the character of the grabber, it all takes it in and it hikes it way up. Mm-hmm. So if you enjoyed the Black Phone, you'll like Black Phone 2.
Okay.
If you weren't super high on the Black Phone, if the whole talk about Christianity and religious beliefs and faith in horrific circumstances, if that's really not your cup of tea, you're not going to connect with the Black Phone as much. But for somebody like me who loves those things, who loves faith and horror and seeing the two brought together and what they have to say about each other, the Black Phone 2 was a winner for me. So that is my number 4 pick of the year.
Okay. Yeah, I sort of have a mixed bag with Scott Derrickson. I think he's a proficient filmmaker. I have seen The Black Phone. I enjoyed The Black Phone. I've seen The Exorcism of Emily Rose. I enjoyed that. I've seen Sinister. Enjoyed that. Doctor Strange is all right. I don't think it's as good as maybe I initially thought it was, but I did like it. I didn't walk away like unappealed by it. But he did make one of my least favorite movies of this year, and that is The Gorge. And I was not a fan of The Gorge. And I think that was one of those movies where I was like, another case of an actor starring in 2 movies this year, Miles Teller, who starred in Eternity and then starred in The Gorge. Well, they're actually more similar than maybe I would admit. But anyway, so in Scott Derrickson, I do think I did want to catch up with The Black Phone 2, but again, there's just so many movies in 2025 that I just didn't get to catch up to.
So many movies.
And there's some coming out that we haven't got to see yet. Like Marty Supreme is one that I've definitely wanted to catch up with, and Sentimental Value, No Other Choice, Park Chan-wook, It Was Just an Accident, the winner of the Palme d'Or at Cannes. There's just so many other ones that I've been like, I'm sad that I haven't been able to catch up with. But it does bring me to my top 3, and this was one that this movie just rocks, man. If you just want it's like and you'll see what I mean. It is just like that really just amazing slice of pizza. It is a piece of pizza and a Coke, and it just is like a heck yeah, brother, let's do this kind of movie, and that is Sinners by Ryan Coogler. And this movie...
It's a very interesting way to describe Sinners.
And this is why I describe it this way. It is one of those movies where it is just entertaining end to end. It's good, it's quality, it's solid. It is not just a popcorn flick, but it is. And it has some of the best performances of the year in it. It has some of the best music, if not the best music of the year in it. And you have just this unreal direction by Ryan Coogler, who, if he wins Best Director, if he's even nominated, if he wins Best Director, I would think it's fully deserved. Just because this movie just rocks. Even though I don't think it's like all the way cohesive, and the third act is kind of muddled. It gets a little bit overzealous, I think, but I do believe Sinners is one of the best movies of the year. It's easily, in my opinion, the most entertaining movie to come out in theaters. And I mean that in a way of, I don't feel like it's very polarizing in the sense that it's divisive. I don't think it's divisive. I think it was a movie that captured audiences and kept audiences. And I think that it's one of those that I'm like, yeah, this movie rocks. It's so good. It is just solid eating for an entire 2 hours, and it is a piece of pizza with a Coke, and it just is like, it's so good. I love Sinners. My number 3 on the year.
Okay. I would have never thought of describing Sinners in that way, but I'm going to go with it. Okay. I'm going to just let that roll.
Sounds good.
So my number 3, breaking into my top 3 of the year, and I believe we're now actually entering into my top 10 films of the year, period, with this film. maybe no, not in the top 5, but we're definitely in the top 10, is Rian Johnson's Knives Out mystery, Wake Up Dead Man.
Hmm.
And I got to catch this as of the time of this recording last Sunday morning. I got to spend Sunday morning in church with Benoit Blanc, with Father Judd, and with Rian Johnson. Can't believe I just lost his name there for a moment. And it was fantastic. This is easily as good as Knives Out, if not better than Knives Out. And here's how I'm gonna caveat that. Knives Out is a more rewatchable, entertaining film, but Wake Up Dead Man, the way that Rian Johnson shapes the story, the mystery that he invokes, the seriousness of the topic at hand, because Wake Up Dead Man is about the murder, and this isn't really spoiling, I don't think. If it is,
it's in the trailer.
Okay, it is. It's about the murder of a hot-headed priest.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as this priest dies, everybody's a suspect. He's got this very small congregation, and when I say small, I mean like count on both hands small. He's this very charismatic, very fire and brimstone, very everybody's going to hell type priest, played by Josh Brolin. And he's got this very small, devoted group of followers. And then this young priest comes in, I believe O'Connor's Father Judd. He comes in, and immediately friction just develops between these two preachers, and between Judd and the rest of the community. So then when Josh Brolin turns up dead, well, who are you going to call to the scene of an unexplainable crime other than the KFC CSI Benoit Blanc?
Mm-hmm.
Benoit Blanc shows up, and he walks with Father Judd, and as they walk through this mystery, that's all I'm going to say about the plot because I don't want to spoil anything. But this film, from a director who, best to my knowledge, is not a very religious man or very Christian faith filmmaker, just based on other things he's made, the way Rian Johnson handles religion is almost spot on, if not. He looks at the good of religion, he looks at the bad, he looks at it used well, he looks at it from a weaponized perspective. And really, Wake Up Dead Man is like a Sunday sermon. It is a Sunday sermon for people who don't go to church and who really probably would never step foot into a church. Through Father Judd and his journey with Benoit Blanc, you see him wrestle with these ideas of compassion and showing grace to the undeserving and showing mercy to the hurting. And it's this wonderful, faithful film about Christianity made by a man who, to my knowledge, isn't a Christian. And the way that he weaves Christianity and theology and Jesus and God into the film and into the mystery, it's entertaining beyond all end. It is a mystery that you're not going to figure out. It is the best mystery of the Knives Out mysteries, as far as the mystery of the story goes. And after this, and after Brick, which we talked about in a couple episodes back, and after having rewatched Knives Out several times since it first came out, I am all in on Rian Johnson. Whatever this guy puts out, if he puts out 3 more Knives Out mysteries, if he puts out 5 more, as long as they are to the quality of the original or to the quality of Wake Up Dead Man or better, I'm all in.
Okay.
It is a great film.
Okay. Well, great recap. Yeah, I still haven't been able to catch up with that one. It's definitely on the top of my list as ones I want to see because I do appreciate Knives Out. Glass Onion, actually more sour on than I.
I am too.
Yeah, I feel like it's unfortunate, but that's okay. But yeah, I'm definitely excited to catch up. Wake Up Dead Man. So now we're in the top two. My number two is one that I was able to catch on my birthday, which I was really grateful for, and that is Train Dreams. Train Dreams is the Clint Bentley, Joel Edgerton, William H. Macy picture. And it is one of these, it's based on a book called by the same name. And apparently the book is a little bit more ethereal, where the movie is a bit more grounded. But it's essentially this man's journey of life. And it is emotional, it is impactful, it is moving, it is beautiful to look at, beautiful to listen to. Um, you see America kind of being built around him in the early 1900s, and you see the landscape, you see the trees, and it's one of those movies that when the credits rolled, I was in shambles. And there's not a lot of movies that have like left me truly emotionally devastated or I wouldn't even say devastated is the right word, but just like in a puddle. And it is one of those movies that it's not because it's so tragic or so happy, but it's just such a beautiful piece of filmmaking. And I I do think that there is some moments of it that are truly some of the best to come out of the 2020s so far. Um, but only within the context of their film. I think that this movie is one of those that everybody should see, and I even got to show it to my wife, who's not a big like movie fan, and she didn't appreciate it to the level that I appreciated it, but she did like it, and that made me feel even more like maybe affirmed in my belief of liking this movie. But Train Dreams is one of those that there's a moment in it that I was just floored by. Um, and the more I think about it, the better the movie gets. But there are some things about it that I think it might be a bit heavy handed on that kind of bring it down for me. But it's not so much so that it's still not just an excellent movie. It was my number 10 on my first time watch list, all the way up there. So excellent movie. Definitely recommend Train Dreams if you haven't got to catch up with it.
Yeah, that's one I was really hoping to catch before we recorded this episode, and
Mm,
I just ran out of time. But
yeah.
it's for sure one that I'm going to get before the end of the year because I'm very excited to see what Train Dreams is, especially after not only reading your review of it but hearing you talk about it. So it's up there very soon. It's one I will catch before the end of the year. So my number two um, film of the year, still up in that top 10 total period, is your number three, and
Mm,
it's Sinners.
Sinners. Okay.
I I loved Sinners. I mean, there's not a lot I can say about it right now because I'm going to talk about it more
Mm,
later on in the episode. It was one that I was excited for. It was one that I was hyped to go see, and it lived up to it. It's a beautiful film, just as you mentioned. I mean, you saw it fall apart a little in the third act. I can see that. For me, it didn't matter.
mm,
It does. It shifts a little bit. It brings in more of the horror element of Sinners in that third act, and it can seem a little off kilter from what the first two thirds of the movie is. But for me, it flowed in excellently. Um,
mm,
the way that Sinners employs music
mm,
as this tool, and this is a similarity in my top two films. We'll see this again in my number one film of the year. But the way that Sinners uses music as both the salvation of its characters and also their damnation,
mm,
and that double-edged sword of music, and the way that they talk about, again, it's probably getting tired of it, me talking about it, but it's one of those movies that it's about music and faith.
mm,
It's about those blues are going to lead you straight to the devil and straight to hell, and you got to run away from that guitar, and you got to cast those demons out of you. But we see that in this movie that the blues are not that. They are, but they aren't. So I love the way that Coogler creates this music as a source both of the character's damnation, but maybe more importantly, their salvation. And how that music, the music and the blues and the performance and the dance, it gives them a way to express everything going on in their hearts and their souls in a way that just their words can't do it, in a way that a Sunday sermon can't do it. It's really a film about the power of music, and the way that music can lift the human spirit, and in some ways maybe the way that music can twist the human spirit, as we see later in the third act of the film. But I can't imagine anyone watching this who hasn't caught up with Sinners. But if you have not, I mean, it's in both of our top 3 films of the year. I don't know how we can give you a stronger recommendation than that.
Yeah, I don't think you can.
Sinners is a film that you've got to check out as soon as you can. It's beautiful. It's moving. It's, yeah. You got to check out Sinners. We're going to talk about it more, so I'm stopping now. No, but you've got to check out Sinners.
Yep. So I'm glad that made your number 2. But that is sad because now I'm realizing my number 1 didn't make your list, but I know you're favorable on it. And so that at least makes you feel a little bit better. But my number 1 is easily the most divisive film of the year. And it's coming from one of my newest favorite filmmakers, one that I'm excited to see because he's messed up, man. He's messed up. I actually recently learned too, Bugonia, he produced. And I did not realize that he was a producer on Bugonia before going into it. But this movie is Eddington by Ari Aster. This features Joaquin Phoenix and Pedro Pascal in May of 2020, a not-so-distant past, in a small town in New Mexico, a not-so-unrealistic place. And it features it through the lens of a Western, a modern-day Western. So it's a period piece from a very, very recent period, dressed like a period piece from a very far past. And I think that's what also makes this movie as good as it is in my eyes. The only 2025 release I've seen that I have stood on and kept as 5 stars. It is... it's so interesting because no one can tell me, the people I've talked to who don't like this movie, no one can tell me why they don't like it. They just say it means nothing. They're like, it just doesn't mean anything. Like, or I don't want to be reminded of why I don't, of 2020. Okay. Well, I don't always want to be reminded of the Renaissance period, but I find Renaissance period films interesting, and I still find them cool, and I still find them fascinating. And 2020 is something we all collectively lived through. And Ari Aster actually finds a way to paint the bleak with the hopeful, with the cautionary tale. And it's ultimately, in my opinion, Eddington is ultimately a movie about control and what we do to gain it and what happens when we lose it. And it has one of the wildest needle drops of this year in Katy Perry's Firework. And only Ari Aster could make a moment in a film where Joaquin Phoenix and Pedro Pascal exist in the same scene. Katy Perry's Firework plays behind them, and it is one of the tensest moments of the entire movie. And there's no way to describe it there's no way to explain that other than you have to watch it. And you'll know, and you'll see exactly what I mean. But Eddington is one of those that I unabashedly love, kind of like your love for Megan 2.0. Like, there are going to be people who hate that movie and people who really like that movie. It works for them. For me, Eddington, I love how divisive it is, because that just proves that years down the road, when people think about, I think, honestly, and this is just my bold prediction, and it could be a hot take, but I think that Eddington is receiving The Thing treatment, When people watched the thing when it originally came out, they were not on board. They were not fans. Even Roger Ebert, not a big fan of the thing when it came out, and now it's revered as a horror classic. I think Eddington will be one of those movies later on down the road when people can get their head out of their butts and they just actually see the movie for what he's trying to say and not this. He's not just being mean. He's not a mean spirited guy. He has mean spirited humor, but he's using that as a device, not as a lens in which he sees the world. It is. There's so much to say about Eddington that I love. I laugh just thinking about some of the moments in this movie that are just ridiculous. When this guy gets thrown out of a store for not wearing a mask, and the store patrons applaud, I wanted to throw up, and I was just chuckling the entire time. I was like, "Wow, that is so painfully accurate to the world we live in." And so it touches on so many social topics. It's the most polarizing film of the year. It is so divisive, and I love it. And I am 100% on board with the love train of Eddington.
Yeah, no, Eddington is one that it just missed my top 10. I think it came in at like number 12.
Yeah,
and I think, and part of that reason was probably because I'm not going to go back and rewatch Eddington anytime soon. I remember all of those things of 2020. I mean, we were adults going through 2020. It's something we'll be able to tell our children about very explicitly. I mean, you and I were, I don't know if you were, but I was in college in 2020. I don't know if you were still there at Moody or if you had left by that point.
I wasn't.
Okay. But I remember being alone in my dorm that spring because everybody had gone home for spring break and they didn't come back. I had not gone home for spring break, so I was there. I was one of the remnant that were there that spring. And I remember the way that it felt during 2020, 2021, the ways that we were isolated, the mask and the mandates and the divisiveness that caused between friends and between people on the same floor in the college community. I remember the freedom of being at a place, at a friend's house, and being able to take that mask off and just see people's faces as we shared a meal and as we played games with one another. I remember what that was like. And I think that if a movie, and this is maybe the highest praise I can give Eddington, I think if a film is made, if one of the highest responsibilities of film is to be a time capsule for the time that they were made, then I think Eddington is the perfect time capsule of 2020. Of the chaos, of the fear, of the absurdity, of just everything going on, of the grasping for control, of the lack of control, of the failure between relationships, of the crazy policies that were inflicted on us that sometimes we didn't even know why or we didn't understand. And Eddington is definitely one of those movies that I will have to have in my collection. Because it's one of those movies that I'm not going to rewatch all the time. But when my kids ask, what was it like? It was like this movie. Let me show you, because this movie captures it better than I can ever tell you. And I think if that's the responsibility of film, then Eddington wins the prize, hands down, in that way. So, now that being said, we're going to go ahead and I'll give my number one film of the year, my number two first time watch, period. And this one, if you don't know me, or if we've not talked about movies recently, then this one's going to seem way out of left field. It does not match any of my other picks really at all. And that's K-pop Demon Hunters. Yes, I said it. Yes, I am a very straight, very white, very American male. I loved K-pop Demon Hunters. And it doesn't have anything to do with the K-pop. And it doesn't have, and that's not true. It does and it doesn't.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's so intrinsically a part of that movie. You can't say it does or doesn't. But yeah, I know what you mean.
There were so many people. I remember reading reviews and hearing people talk about this movie. And they're like, this movie's not really for me, and to me that blew my mind after watching this film, because the film that is for me is one that is entertaining, is one that has a story to tell, is one that can tell that story, and it's one that afterwards leaves you different, one way or another. And that was not near as eloquent as I put it online in my review, but that's okay. And K-pop Demon Hunters is a film that did that for me. It connected to me in a way that more than even any of the other films on this list. As I watched Rumi and Zoe and Mira and even Jinu, as I watched just their story, as I watched the things they were struggling with, as I watched Rumi trying to hide these broken parts of her that she was ashamed of, that she thought people wouldn't accept her for, that really she didn't have any control over. This was literally something she had not done and she could not control. I don't know why I'm being so vague. If you've seen any movies in 2025, you've seen K-pop Demon Hunters. Mm-hmm. That's okay. We're just going to keep going. And I watch these characters as they're wrestling. Rumi with her insecurities and these parts of her that she wants to just destroy. Mira with this being rejected by her family and by being the black sheep, as she so eloquently describes in Golden, which is just blown up the music charts. With Zoe being this child, this girl of a divorced family, being torn between her Korean and her American heritage. With Jinu, with just the guilt that he feels over things that he did in his life that has led him to now he's a servant of Guima, the head demon or head devil or whatever you want to call him, the big bad. And just watching these characters, and I was able to connect with these characters all across the board. It's one of those movies that touched my life. There's a line in the end of this, in the final song of the film, where the lyric is, "We listen to the demons and we let them get between us, but none of us are out here on our own." And that line, more than any of the music in this film, hit me, because I know, myself as a Christian who believes in Jesus and is saved and believes and follows and tries to be a decent human being, a decent Christian, and tries to follow the Lord that I profess to love. There are so many times that the voices of the demons, so to speak, I'm not getting into all that kind of theology, but the influence from the world or my own self-doubt or my own insecurities, that I listen to those, that I fall prey to those, that, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I can't provide well enough. Oh, I'm a horrible Christian because I watched K-pop Demon Hunters. All of those things, that those voices of just evil demon voices. That's what it is. That's what I believe. That's what you believe. Those voices of our enemy that just tries to take us and separate us from one another and divide us. All of that I felt. And I felt it in a way that this movie touched me as a person, but it touched me even more as a Christian. And just listening to those voices of the demons and trying to hide all the things that I think people will reject me for, or that I know that Christians will reject me for. And they tell you in the movie, we hit our edges, we hit our jagged edges, we silence the colors in our head, but now we're letting all that go. And this is what it sounds like when we drop the lies, when we let the colors and the creativity that's in our minds and in our hearts come out, when we let those jagged, ugly edges come to the light so other people can see them and come to either love us or they can walk away. When we take the guilt that we've felt for the things that we've done wrong in our life and in the past, and we let it go, yeah, I could ramble on about this movie all night. I won't. I'll bring it to a close. I can't imagine that if you're watching this, you haven't seen K-pop Demon Hunters.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those movies that connected with me not only as a person but as a Christian and as a believer. And when a movie does that, that's when it changes me.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, let's be honest, this movie is so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
The music is so good. The characters are so funny. Rumi, Mira, and Zoe are so human. They're so not a perfect heroine girl. There's that scene at the beginning where Rumi's eating that big roll of sushi and she goes, ah, 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 ah. And it's so not ladylike and so not prim and proper, and it's so great. Yeah, Zoe with the Cheetos in her mouth, never feel my wrath, and just crumbs are splurting everywhere. These characters, they're so human. They're so real. The music is so good. And I love this film. And it was an instant 5-star for me. It's one that a couple weeks later I was having a bad day and I turned it on and it made the day a little bit better. So my number 1 film of the year, my number 2 film of the first time watches, the completely uncharacteristic for a person like me, K-pop Demon Hunters.
Yeah, I think it's actually quite fitting. I think for you, especially after we talked and learned more about it, because I also watched K-pop Demon Hunters, and I think that it was one of those films that I highly anticipated you liking. I just didn't know you would like it that much. And so, but it's really not surprising, especially since I know you. I think that it makes sense for it to be your number 1 on the year. And it's a great movie. I can tell you too, what's so funny is it's definitely my wife's favorite movie of the year. As I think she's probably seen it 5 times to this point.
Oh, wow.
She just really likes this movie, and she really likes the soundtrack, and she just was definitely in love with the story. And so,
yeah, I listened to the soundtrack for weeks in my headphones at work so nobody could judge me.
Yeah, well,
but I was definitely bopping to How It's Done while I was walking around a construction site with all these big burly men.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I'm sure it you know what, they heard it, they'd understand. So, but it's so interesting that that's what you talked about as your number 1, because when we're talking about defining films of 2025, I had gone through a number of them in my head. K-pop Demon Hunters is one of them that I thought of. Sinners was one of the defining films of 2025 that I thought of. One Battle After Another is one of them that I thought of. Eddington is interesting because it's so much the defining film of 2020.
Yep.
But I don't know that it's a defining film of 2025.
Right.
Just only in the fact that it was such interesting reception. But the film that I went with for the defining film of 2025 is K-pop Demon Hunters.
Great. We don't have to talk long about this one.
Yeah.
I did too.
And so, okay. Well, I felt like I was between ultimately 2, One Battle After Another, and K-pop Demon Hunters is what the final 2 came down to. And the only reason I give it to K-pop Demon Hunters over One Battle After Another is because I think that it was a cultural movement. It is being nominated for a Grammy. Golden is being nominated for a Grammy. Like, it's been nominated, and it could possibly win. Like, I would not be shocked at all if that song won the Grammy for Song of the Year. That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. And while I was not in love with the film like you are, I still really enjoyed it. And I think that most people you talk to, when they talk about K-pop Demon Hunters, it was pretty well received. There's not a lot of people who just openly don't like this movie. Most people really do. And if I'm going to point back to a movie that defined an era or defined our cultural movement for 2025, I'm going to easily point back to K-pop Demon Hunters. And I think that is the movie that has to be the defining film of 2025. I can't imagine it being another one. And so well, it's not my favorite. It is the defining film of 2025. It's the one that when you look back across every board, that's the one that's going to be remembered the most.
Yeah, it was just, I mean, it was no contest for me. And it's not even because this was my favorite film of the year. It's not even because it was my number two period of the year. It was just the reception this film got, the charts that it topped on Spotify, not just golden, but how it's done, what it sounds like, soda pop. I mean, these songs by this fictional but real K-pop group were topping number one, number two, number three, number seven. I mean, they were in the top 10, many of them, for weeks. I believe Demon Hunters is in the running for the best animated feature Oscar. And that was something Netflix had to fight for because I guess the rule is you have to have a theatrical release. So the Academy, they're like, no, 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 this was a straight to streaming movie. And Netflix is like, no, 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 we were in theaters. We are qualified to be nominated. And I believe they are. And I believe they could win. Easily on the popular vote. On the critical Academy vote, it's yet to be determined. But yeah, it was just, this was a movie that just sparked a phenomenon across our culture, across our society. Even with people that didn't like this film, there were schools. I saw articles about schools and areas that were banning this movie or banning the music, particularly like Christian schools or Catholic schools that were just completely banning the music from being played in their school. I believe that was somewhere over in the UK or overseas, just because it's a demon hunter movie and things of that nature. But yeah, it's easily. I mean, whether you love this movie, whether you hate this movie, whether you enjoyed this movie, when people think of the movie that made 2025, it's going to be K-pop Demon Hunters.
And I think that will ultimately be seen either in the fact that I say the movie of 2025 because that's exactly what it is. That doesn't mean it's going to have the staying power, right, of some of these other movies we mentioned that people continue to watch it and show their children and their children's children. It doesn't necessarily mean that. But when you talk about a movement in 2025, K-pop Demon Hunters is the obvious choice. And so I'm glad that we both agreed on that. I'm not surprised that we did. That definitely makes sense to me. But now, as we are coming to a close with our lists, we're going to go through our top 3 favorite performances of the year and our top 3 favorite moments from the movies this year. And maybe not favorite is the right word, but most memorable. And so, Nolan, why don't you go ahead and list your top 3rd favorite performance of this year or memorable performance?
So my number 3 memorable performance was Madeline McGraw as Gwen in Black Phone 2.
Okay.
Shouldn't really come as a surprise. Madeline is the faith Christian heart of the film. She is the one that she's struggling with these visions and these dreams. She's the one that in this film ultimately goes toe to toe with the grabber. She has some of the greatest lines in this movie. Should have looked up a couple of them before this moment now so I could give you a couple of them. But the insults that this girl puts out are top notch. Like, we're talking, and this isn't going to be a positive thing for you, but we're talking like sleepaway camp level insults. Okay. And the fact that they're corny and they're rough and they're bad, but they're painful and they're so good and they're so clever. And her being the Christian voice in this film, and just the way that she speaks and the lines that she has and the ways that she wrestles with faith, it's a genuineness that you don't really see in a stereotypical Christian character. And I think that's one of those things that Scott Derrickson does so good as a writer. That's something that Madeline McGraw, now playing Gwen for 2 films, has really taken and making her own. So she is my number 3 most memorable performer in Black Phone 2.
Perfect. Okay. I have gone back and forth. There's so many good performances, and I think that that's what makes a top three list so difficult, right? Even if we did top five, even if we did top 10, there would still be people I'd leave off that I immensely enjoyed and were a big part of the reason why those films worked.
Yeah.
This third one, I think, is going to come as a surprise to you.
Okay.
And I was like, you know what? As you were talking, I was going back and forth between two. And this is the one I have decided firmly as my top three performance. And that is Sophie Thatcher in Companion.
I had her as my number 5. She was in the running.
She is unreal. And I'm not going to talk about why she's so unreal. But there is an element of her performance. There is an image that sticks in my mind. And it's not a movie that I loved. I think it's great for what it is. It's a good little fun movie. It's an interesting premise. And I'll say that there's a twist that happens super early that you are like, whoa, that's a lot sooner than I thought. And if you read up on Companion or you've seen Companion, you know what I'm talking about. But there's an image of Sophie Thatcher's face when she's sitting at the dinner table and there's a flame under her hand. That is just genuinely some of the best facial expression acting I've seen, especially when you realize what's going on in the context of the scene too. Companion was one of those movies. The reason I go with Sophie Thatcher is because the reason this movie works at all on any level is because of her.
Absolutely.
And there are other good performances. Jack Quaid does a good job, but he's also just playing Jack Quaid. He's just kind of playing a douchey white guy. Not that Jack Quaid in real life is a douchey white guy, but he's just kind of that, he's just kind of playing a stereotype. Sophie Thatcher is reaching different levels of a performance here that I think, unfortunately, is going to go overlooked because it's the movie that it is. But the reason that movie works at all is because of her. So Sophie Thatcher in Companion, easily one of my favorite performances of the year.
Yeah, I very heavily considered her. And she almost made it into those top 3. Again, she was number 5 as I was going through because I am so thrilled to see what Sophie Thatcher does. She was easily my favorite part of Companion. She was the best part of Heretic that came out, I believe, last year from 2024. I'm super excited to see what she does, especially in horror film, but really just as an actress. She is completely captivating. I'm so glad that she made your list and we got to talk about her. So my number 2 is Josh O'Connor as Father Judd from Wake Up Dead Man.
Yeah, I've heard that his performance in that is just...
It's unreal. And a lot of it is very similar to McGraw's performance, as he's this man of faith. He's this man of the pastorate who he's got these radical ideas of Jesus coming to love and to serve and not to ostracize or beat down those who are already broken down. I know it's a crazy thought. But he's also, throughout this film, throughout Wake Up Dead Man, you see Josh O'Connor as Father Judd just really wrestling with his faith. Really wrestling with the best way to serve the church. Really wrestling with these ideas of guilt from things that he had done in his past, from things that he's being accused of doing now in the present. And the way he stands with Benoit Blanc, with Craig Blanc, toe-to-toe as this man of faith, and then Benoit Blanc being a proud atheist, as he declares early in his time in the film. You see throughout the film, really, Father Judd's not trying to convince himself, or he's not trying to convince Benoit Blanc of the things he believes about faith and about Christ and about mercy and forgiveness. But he's really trying to convince himself. He's trying to convince himself that he is worthy of the mercy and the forgiveness of Christ. He's trying to convince himself that he is worthy to be a shepherd to the sheep, to the flock of God. And he just gives just this unreal performance. Yeah, he's fantastic. He is absolutely my number 2 performance of the year.
Yeah, I'm really upset that I couldn't see that one before we got to have this discussion, mainly because of the Josh O'Connor performance I've been hearing so much about. And so, but I'm glad that he made your list, and I'm sure he might have probably been a contender on mine.
Mm-hmm.
But my number 2 is one that I know it's from a film you did not like, but he is tremendous, and I have not gotten him off my mind all year, and that's Robert Pattinson as Mickey Barnes in Mickey 17. He is goofy. He plays in a very quick succession, very distinct Expendables.
Yeah.
And that's pretty impressive. And he makes you laugh as you're sitting there, as they just continually, in Mickey 17, he's what's known as an expendable. They just dispose of their bodies while they're trying to figure out what type of person could live on this type of planet. And Mickey Barnes is the character, and he plays mainly in this film Mickey 17 and Mickey 18.
Mm-hmm.
And they're so vastly different, but they're still so vastly the same that I think that the one reason, and I'm just going to give them a shout out because they're not going to make my list, but Michael B. Jordan is also one of those guys who plays 2 different roles. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to include them. They were in my top 5 consideration, but when I was looking at dual performances, the only reason I give it to Mickey over Michael B. Jordan is not because I think his performance is maybe more qualified or better acted, but I think that the reason Mickey 17 works at all for me is because of that performance, wherein you have Sinners, Ryan Coogler's direction, the cinematography, the score, the young musician, Delroy Lindo, I think is his name. He's the older drunk, right? Mm-hmm. There's so many other star performances in that movie. Not that there aren't other good performances in Mickey 17, but Mark Ruffalo's is really laughable. It's one of the most poor portrayals of a villain ever because he's so annoyingly trying to be Donald Trump, which, regardless of your political affiliation, that's just boring. That's such a boring interpretation of a villain, and it's not even hidden. And but Robert Pattinson as Mickey Barnes, man, what a dude! And also one of the coolest moments in the film towards the very end. That is just so solid. I really love it. Coming from Mickey 18, right? It is one of my favorite performances of the year. One of my favorite Robert Pattinson performances. Probably my second favorite after his portrayal in The Lighthouse. But Mickey Barnes, my number 2, Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, I will say Robert Pattinson as Mickey Barnes is the only reason that film has 2 stars. He was the only he wasn't the only enjoyable part. The other kind of smaller bit characters were enjoyable as well, but yeah, no, that movie as a whole it did not work for me. But Mickey Barnes, I can't argue with him being on your list because he makes that movie tolerable, for lack of a better word, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So I wrestled with my number 1 a lot because I didn't want to be basic. But I'm really afraid I'm going to be basic. There's a lot of people I could have put here. Mm-hmm. Not as the number one, but a lot of other names that could have gone on this list in this top 3. And there's a lot of people in this film that could have gone in this top 3. But I'm going to be basic, and I'm going to go with Michael B. Jordan in Sinners.
It's not basic.
I can't not give it to him.
I'm glad you are. Someone needs to. That's why I even mentioned it, because I didn't know. I had a feeling probably, but he deserves it. He does.
It has to be Michael B. Jordan. And here's the deal. What you said about that film was absolutely correct. Haley Steinfeld in that film probably gives her best performance. And I really like her as an actress. I think she's really strong in a lot of things. What is Stack's, not Stack, the wife, the ex-wife of one of the
But it starts with a V. I can't remember her name, but yes, his wife is unbelievable in the film.
Unbelievably good. I think she's up for a supporting actress Oscar. If she doesn't end up, she should be, and it's a crime because she is just phenomenal. But it had to be Michael B. Jordan for the Smokestack Twins. I had to give it to him. He is so entertaining. He is so charismatic. He is so unique in the Twins. Very similar, like you would expect twins to be, but also they're very different. Smoke and Stack are two different men.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of one of those things where you almost forget that it's one actor playing these two different men. You think it's a pair of twins, or you think it's two actors that look really close together. You forget that it's one man playing these two characters.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, at the end of the day, it can be basic, it can be not, it can be fair, it can be obvious. But I had to go with Smoke and Stack, played by Michael B. Jordan.
It's a great pick. There's nothing wrong with that pick. There's nothing basic about it. Sometimes the right answer is the most obvious one. And I think that Michael B. Jordan, I hope he gets his flowers because he plays those roles perfectly. He really does. He really does. And yeah, I think when I was deciding my favorite actors, like my favorite performances from this year, I didn't go with them. But that's not because their role is not significant. It's just because I feel like these other movies, they're not as good as Sinners, and without these performances, they wouldn't be anywhere near what they are. And that brings me to my number one, and I was wrestling between a couple under this one. This one is the only one I didn't wrestle with, and that's Sean Penn from One Battle After Another.
Mm-hmm.
His performance in that movie, I know you haven't got to see it, is one of the strangest, most creepy, most funny. Every time that man's on screen, I am utterly enthralled. There is a moment, there is a line that he delivers at the end of the movie that is the most absurd suggestion that he has, but because of who he's speaking to, you think, and I'm not going to tell you if they do or don't,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, they might believe him. Even though what he's saying is so outrageous. And it's so funny that I was like, my stomach hurt from laughing just because of how he delivers his performance. The way he walks, which this is going to be a study I do later on in a Paul Thomas Anderson study of his performers having a gait, having a stride to them. There are a lot of interesting when you think about, and just quick side note, Freddie Quell from The Master has this weird hobbled, bent over back. Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood, because of his limp, he has this strange gait that he has as he carries himself. Sean Penn has this strange gait as he carries himself in this movie. When you look at there's the self-assured walk of Bradley Cooper in Licorice Pizza. There's so many interesting struts that he gives his characters, and Sean Penn makes it so much a part of his, and it makes so much sense because the way he's walking like a robot, but he's also, it's like a man conflicted within himself, which he is. And you see the reason that movie is the reason it works to the level it does for me is because of Sean Penn's character. Not just because of his acting, but because of the nuance that the character already has intrinsically. And so when it comes to performance, that I really don't know. I can't picture anyone else doing what Sean Penn did in this role because I don't think Sean Penn knew what he was doing in this role, and it's so beautiful. It's such a masterful performance. I know Leonardo DiCaprio does a good job. I know Benicio del Toro does a good job, and Chase Infinity does a great job as Leonardo DiCaprio's daughter in the film. Regina Hall, all these other people bring great performances, but no one even holds a candle to Sean Penn. He's such in a league of his own, but it's not because he's just acting better. It's just because he's just acting like how this character is supposed to act. And this one was a lock for me. When I was looking at all the other ones, there was no comparison. This one held it for me.
All right.
And then that brings us and I'll start us off with this one. But that brings
Okay.
us to our favorite movie moments of the year, our top three. Um, and I think we might have the same number one. I'm interested to see. But
It's very
my
possible.
my number three, um, there's a whole lot of sequences you could call out in the not only this movie but in this franchise. And this movie's not good. I did not like this movie, but this sequence blew my mind, and that is the submarine sequence from Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning. It
Okay.
is, it's the final one, and so where all the stress came from the other Mission Impossible movies, from the moments Ethan Hunt would find himself in, this one
Mhm.
especially felt stressful because it's claustrophobic. He's underwater. Everything that's happening. The fact that this is mostly a practical shooting is that is ridiculous. Tom Cruise is a psychopath in real life, and I'm really not afraid to say that. But he delivers the best acting performances for the types of movies that he's in, and I'm so grateful we have him as an acting
Mhm.
national treasure. As an actor, I'll forever cherish Tom Cruise. And it's for moments like this in the submarine sequence in Mission Impossible 2. It's unbelievable. It is just so intense. It is perfect encapsulation of what the Mission Impossible movies do best, and that's action sequences. And that's my number three sequence moment from the year.
Okay. Yeah, not a movie that I caught up with. I actually fell off after Fallout, so
Mm,
I've got a little bit of ways to go on those. So my number three is from The Life of Chuck,
okay.
and it comes at the middle of the movie where Tom Hiddleston as Chuck Krantz, he comes up on this street performer playing drums on, I believe it's an actual drum set, if memory serves me right. But he comes up on this street performer, and he's dressed in this suit on a hurry. I believe he works in a financial institution of some sort. Um, he's a paper pushing job in some big company. But he comes up on this street drummer, just playing a little bit, trying to make some money. Nothing really too crazy. And he stands there for a minute, and then he starts to dance. And Tom Hiddleston can dance.
Mm,
Just as Chuck Krantz, he goes and as he's dancing, this crowd of people, they gather around to watch him. The drummer gets louder and more enthusiastic with their playing. He reaches in and he brings someone from the crowd into the dance circle with him, and he dances with her. And it's one of those moments where it's like the moment at the core of the Red Shoes,
mm,
where we see the core ballet,
mm,
and it's just the music, and it's just the dance, and it's the story that that moment tells,
mm,
that's just completely enrapturing. And that's what Tom Hiddleston does here as Chuck in this just street dance performance scene. He is absolutely captivating
mm,
for the amount of time that he's in this film, because he's not in the film as Tom Hiddleston is not in the film as significantly as you would think he is, based on the poster and the promotion of the film. But for this moment that he's in, for this sequence, he definitely earns that top billing spot.
mm,
He's absolutely captivating in this moment.
mm. Yeah, I've heard a lot about that dancing sequence. I've not got to obviously catch up with the film, but I've been very interested in seeing that moment, especially after hearing so much about it. Even the people who aren't high on the movie love that moment.
Hmm.
So I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see it when I finally get to. All right, my number two. This is probably going to shock you as much as it shocked me.
Okay.
Um, and I say that not because you've seen the movie, you actually haven't seen it, but the fact that out of all the movies, out of all the things I've seen this year, that this particular moment would be so high on the list for me. It's from the movie The Naked Gun,
Okay.
and there is a sequence with a snowman that, if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is so unreal that you're watching this happen because you don't anticipate what's about to come forth with this snowman. That essentially, I'll say this: it's sort of like a Frosty the Snowman situation. This
Okay.
snowman comes to life, and you realize that there might be some jealousy brewing. It's like a 2-minute sequence. You realize there might be some jealousy brewing between this snowman, Liam Neeson, and Pamela Anderson, and how the snowman takes to that. And it is so funny. It is one of the best moments of the year for me. I laughed so hard. I still think about that moment. Of all the jokes in The Naked Gun, this one works better than any of the rest of them. And if I could show anybody just a sequence from this movie to get them to watch it, it would be this one. It's unfortunate because it's the peak of the movie, and that I would be showing them the peak, but it is peak. It is why comedy should exist, to make people laugh this hard, because it is just an unnatural thing that fits so well into this movie that I don't even know how to explain. It's like, this should not fit into this movie this well, but it does, and it fits just perfectly. It's so funny. One of my favorite moments from the year. It's a snowman scene at a lodge with Liam Neeson and Pamela Anderson, and this, we'll say, love triangle of sorts begins to form and begins to end.
Okay. I will take you at your word for that.
Fantastic. Can't wait for you to see it.
So my number 2 is actually, this is a funny scene, but this is not a Naked Gun slapstick humor funny scene. And this is the Sawzall scene from Together.
Oh, yeah. That is a funny scene. That's a great pick.
It's absolutely, this is both one of the most grotesque moments, although it's not visually grotesque because you don't see the grotesqueness of it.
The idea of it is grotesque.
Right.
So what is about to ensue? Yeah.
It is both the most grotesque moment of the film and the most funny moment of the film. And it's where, it's in that dance where Together works the best as a film. So I can't say anymore because I will spoil that scene if I do. But it is my number 2 pick. Had to be the Sawzall scene from Together.
Yeah, and I think we can talk about this scene together because there's no way it's not your number 1.
No, there's not.
And it's the oneer from Sinners. That barn scene.
It's Sammy's performance.
Yeah, it's truly one of the most amazing moments I've seen on a movie theater screen, maybe ever in my life. The way it made me feel in that moment is unlike anything else I've ever felt.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen the movie, this doesn't spoil anything because it really has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. It's really
not connected to the plot.
And so intrinsically in this moment, talking about, it's more connected to the theme than it is the plot.
Yeah.
And so that's why it works as well as it does. But it's really a barn burner. And it is. It is. It's literally a barn burner. And Stanley begins to show us his musical talent by playing and singing. And all of a sudden you start to see some things that don't really line up with the cultural timeline.
Because this movie shot, it's not Civil War era, but I believe it's just post Civil War, isn't it?
I believe that's correct. It's
post Civil War.
Yeah, you'll just know when you watch it. It's a very dated film. It's not a film that is like culturally like happening right now. In fact, you even see later in the epilogue a moment that is like the 80s, 70s or 80s, I would say.
Something like that.
But this film happens where it's very much a certain time and place. I think you're right. I think it's just post-Civil War era. But this moment of Stanley playing his instrument and the camera just tracks through the barn and you see all of these different types of cultures merge together You see the hip hop culture, you see African culture, you see this like I want to say it's like Jamaican funk, like
Yeah.
cultural like gathering. It is unbelievable the way the camera tracks all of it, the way it makes you feel, with the performance in the background. You see why music is the main point of this film in this scene, and there can't be a better shot of the year. There can't be a better moment in the year. There's not. I really don't believe so. Even though it's not my favorite movie of the year, there's not a better moment of the year.
No.
And yeah, I just love that scene.
Yeah. And I realize now as we're talking, I misspoke on the way I described the dance scene with Chuck. Because you see, that's one man showing how one man can do something amazing and all of that kind of nature. And it is captivating. It's a captivating moment. It's the best part of the film, no doubt. But it's not, you can't comp it to the Red Shoes. But this moment with Sammy, with these blend of African cultures and their music and their dance and the way it blends and the way the camera moves, you absolutely can compare this to the Red Shoes ballet. I mean, it is that integral. It is that beautiful. This is the moment where, because you've got Sammy, this boy he's a preacher's son, and his father is just, he can't stand his music. He is very much, your music boy is going to send you to hell. And when Sammy just gets this chance to finally let go and to pour out his heart, it's his music and his lyrics and his playing is so powerful. It conjures all of these other cultures and dances and times of history, both past and present and future. And his music it shows how music is these people's salvation.
Mm-hmm.
It shows how this is where these people, the black people of this time, this is where they found their hope. Mm-hmm. It was in the blues. It was in this music that Sammy brings. And it's music that is salvation, using that word in the context of the film, not just for people like Sammy, but for all people. It's this music that brings the third act of the film into focus. It's Sammy's playing that brings the unwelcome guest, we'll say, that really draws them. It's his music that raises the spirits, as the introduction to this film says that some music and some players can. It's beautiful. I might get off here and go just turn on that scene tonight and watch it again, because it's absolutely astounding. Mm-hmm. It is the moment of the year, hands down.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And you can't argue it, or you risk being wrong.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree. And so those are our 2025 first-time watches and 2025 release opinions on just some of our favorite performances or moments, favorite films. And there are, of course, a number of films that we haven't got to see yet, or others that we didn't mention, but it doesn't mean we didn't also appreciate them. I do think overall 2025 was actually a pretty decent year for films.
It was pretty solid.
Yeah, some letdowns for sure, but ultimately positive feeling, especially as we go out of 2025 with some that we have to look forward to. And so feel free to let us know some of your favorites, some of the things that you really appreciated, and we'll be sure to comment back to let you know why you're right or why you're wrong. But ultimately, this is, of course, film and movies, and we all have, as you can see, just very unique and different palettes for this kind of stuff. And so we always encourage you guys to listen, not only to our podcast, but to other film podcasts. We always shout out Film Spotting with Josh Larson and Adam Kempenar, and they are just celebrating their 20th year on air. Adam's at least for sure his 20th year. Josh joined later on in the podcast, but they also have their sister podcast, The Next Picture Show, where they discuss 2 movies in tandem, one from the past and one from the present, one that has just come out, and how they can relate to each other. And so feel free to check out them as well. And so we thank you guys so much for joining us. We hope that you've had an excellent 2025 year. Hope you look forward to 2026. As I know I am for sure. I think there will be some pretty good movies that come out in 2026 that will for sure bring a lot of discussion. And so we thank you guys for everything. We hope that you guys have a good rest of your year. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year.
We look forward to seeing you in 2026.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
I'm finished.